Right. Hello, everyone. Hopefully, you can hear us and see us. We'll be starting in just a second. Please let me know how our audio levels are, because for some reason they all got reset. So I need to dial them in again. Say hi, Dan, so we can get a balance on your audio.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Hello.
I'm pretty sure yours is way too loud.
Hopefully I sound okay. I realize I have my resting jerk face on.
Oh, I forgot to put the thing up. There we go.
Let's mute that. And I'm gonna put down the quality a little bit.
Happy Friday indeed. This will be the last show of the year, just to keep everyone in the loop. Our next show will be on January 13th, so a little ways away. But yeah, we'll make this one a good one, hopefully.
Hopefully it'll be short.
I doubt it. Have you seen how many stories we've got?
I know. And we don't even have Twitter as a topic.
Yeah, let's try and avoid that, because I think everyone's tired of Twitter.
Let's just make the whole podcast that. Hold on a second. All right. You can't chew on every cable, cat. Come on. Jeez. My cat's going through the let's chew the cable phase. No. Come on. Everybody you guys all get out of here or chill out. No, you're not going
Can't
for a
you
walk.
shut them out, or do they just bark at the door?
They would probably just be scratch at the door. No, Abby, what? Stop. Come on, go. Oh boy.
Oh, I should do a sound test, because I haven't done that yet. Testing. Oh, testing. 1, 2, 3.
Oh man, I really hope she
Testing,
doesn't
1,
have to go
2,
to
3.
the bathroom or something. I think she might. Zach, I might have to take her out for 2 minutes. Can you hear me?
My mic was muted. Okay, do you want to do that now then?
Yeah. I'm back in a sec. What? All right, come on.
I'll keep chat entertained. Dan's voice is extra deep this week. Sounds nice. My voice is, well, I don't know if you can hear, but I've been super sick this week. I lost my voice totally last week, which is half the reason why we didn't do the show, because I didn't have a voice. So it's kind of almost recovered. We're like 90% there at this point, but I'm still not feeling great. Just got illnesses all over the place. Twitter is not a Windows topic. Please stop bringing it up. Twitter is a community topic. All of everything that I've ever learned about Microsoft, most of it came through Twitter. So that's kind of how it factors into things. It's Microsoft uses Twitter, so it is important, because if Microsoft stops using Twitter, which I think is more likely than people realize, yeah, that would be big news. If the deal falls apart, I think they should go and acquire Twitter to make the platform better. There's a part of me that kind of blames Microsoft for not buying Twitter, because the terrible leadership of Twitter now is the result of Microsoft not buying them. That's how I'm choosing to look at it. So thanks, Microsoft, for ruining Twitter. To talk about Instagram and Facebook also. Instagram and Facebook also suck. They are all terrible now. Twitter was the only good one up until the last handful of weeks, and then it became bad too. And now, it's on the same pile as all the other social networks for me. The only good social network is MySpace, and that's it. There's not even like Bebo isn't around anymore. Tumblr, nah, I don't think so. It's owned by Yahoo? Doesn't Yahoo own it, or AOL? They're all terrible, all terror bad. Twitter was the gold standard, and now it's just like all the rest, and that's the saddest thing about it. Anyway, we're not going to talk about that in the show. Don't worry. This is the pre-show that nobody gets to hear or see after the fact. Discord is that's fair. Discord's a pretty good social media, but so see, a lot of people seem to connect or group together social messaging platforms with social networks, which I don't see them as the same. A social network is completely different from an app or a website that just sort of focuses on instant messaging between people. Group chats, Telegram, Discord, Skype, Teams are all messaging apps, not social networks, in my eyes anyway. But I know apparently a lot of people see that differently. They seem to think all of them, if it's something social, it counts as a social network, which I guess technically is the definition of a social network. But
I'm a social network.
Yeah, no, you are not a social network.
What? Oh yeah, I'm an anti-social network. All right. Sorry, everybody. Doggy apparently had to go to the bathroom at the perfect time. Let's start recording.
I'm recording.
3, 2, 1. Welcome to the Windows Essential Podcast, episode 294 for December 16th, 2022. Hey everyone, Gianna Rubino here, joined with Zach Bowden for another exciting episode of the Windows Essential Podcast. Actually, it's the last Windows Essential Podcast for 2022. As you may have noticed, the news has sort of slowed down quite a bit. Plus, we got a lot going on behind the scenes on the site. And something about holidays coming up and everybody not wanting to work. So as to when we will return, that won't be till January 13th. I know it's quite a ways off, and in between there will be CES. Unfortunately, I will be at CES, which would be great. So I'll get some hands-on with all the cool new stuff, of which I can already tell you there's some really cool new stuff that's coming. Yeah, I already got some of the winners at least for the most innovative and coolest PC stuff that's coming. So make sure to pay attention to that. But we can't do the podcast because I'll be flying back that afternoon, and Zach will be being tortured at a wedding.
Quite literally,
not his, which is always worse. If you're a guy, you know what that's like. Going to weddings is pretty much the least most interesting thing we ever want to do. Anyway, let's get to the topics here. I'm trying to dry off here. Our weather is just, man, it is just gross out. I opened the door to take the dog out, and the door just blew open and almost broke off. I was like, what the heck's this? Anyway, we got some Windows 11 news, of course, because what would this podcast be without the updates to the Insider program, of which there were a few, especially since we weren't here last week. Surface Hub upgrade apparently is coming. If you don't know, that system is technically modular, and looks like they're finally going to give an upgrade, which will give Zach a reason to, I guess, try to upgrade his device, which would be kind of fun. HoloLens 3 is back in the news, indirectly, we should point out, although Microsoft was directly talking about it, or at least referencing it, and it's not dead. They're just, we'll explain what's going on with it, which I think makes a lot of sense. If you're looking for the consumer version under your Christmas tree next year, yeah, that's not happening. So, don't get your hopes up. Unified OneNote UI update. I don't even know what that's about, but Zach will tell us. There was a report about the Microsoft Super App, which turned into a funny editorial by me, which I got a little bit wrong, but it's still, the editorial part was still correct. But we'll go over what that all means and what that is. The FTC is suing Microsoft. That happened last week, of course. We'll explain all that. And I guess finally, there's also we got to do some review stuff. We did have the Logitech G Cloud handheld review, which I want to kind of talk about. And then finally, we wrap up with predictions and expectations for 2023. Zach, how are you doing now on this fine Friday, cold Friday you have in the UK?
Very cold Friday. I am recovering from being ill. I've been very sick the last week and a half. One of the reasons why we didn't do the show last week is because I quite literally lost my voice. I couldn't talk. Nothing would come out when I tried, and it was very painful. But I'm almost back now. So if you can hear it in my voice, I feel slightly off because I am still not completely recovered. But we're getting through it. I'm very, very looking forward to the holidays at this point. I just need to lay down and sleep until January. That's what I need to do.
Yeah, this is the kind of weather. So I don't want to talk about weather. I know it's a boring topic, but it's just it's so cold and rainy and just really miserable. It reminds me of when a long time ago I was in Bremerhaven, Germany, which is on the coast. And it was just like this. It was around Christmas time. It was just cold. And when it's cold and rainy, for some reason, it's colder than when it's
Yeah.
cold and dry.
Yeah.
And all I want to do is eat mac and cheese with like a hot chocolate and just like sit on the couch.
Yeah.
And that's how I feel at this very moment. So I'm going to try to do the podcast. We also will try to avoid talking about Twitter as much as we can. I will say, though, some of us are solely, we do have accounts on Mastodon. What is my account? Yeah, it's a good question. It's like, I think it's Daniel at Daniel _ Rubino. So it's the same at Cloud Mastodon. I don't know. Let me bring it up here.
Forgot again. I can tell you mine. Mine's at Zach Bowden at mastodon.social. I'm on like the main Mastodon instance. That's the thing about Mastodon. It's decentralized. So there's technically many different Mastodons hosted on different servers and different networks, but they all talk to each other. So I can message Dan on his Mastodon instance and see his tweets and stuff, but we're technically not hosted on the same server. So yeah, it's not a great system. It's kind of neat though. It's just like any other service where once you get it up and running and you start following people, it just turns into Twitter 2.0 or Twitter 3.0. So yeah, I'm at Daniel _ Rubino at mastodon.cloud. For some reason I didn't get the social because I don't know how to sign up for specific servers. But whatever it is. So we're going to be, we'll still be posting on Twitter, of course. I'm not like completely abandoning it, but, just in case. Anyway, let's get to the Windows 11. Oh, I should also mention Windows Central is on there now, too. So we're at Windows Central at mastodon.cloud. It's got to be finished set up, but we will be on there as well. So, yeah, cool. All right, let's get to Windows 11 stuff. What's going on with Windows 11, Zach? Yeah, so this is pretty much just going to be a recap of the last 2 weeks in the Insider program, because I don't think they've shipped any features to production recently. We'll start with build 25262. The only notable inclusion with this build really was that they are expanding who can access the widgets panel. So previously, the widgets panel has been there on every instance of Windows 11. It's pre-installed. But unless you're signed into a Microsoft account, you've not been able to access it. You'll see it in the taskbar, but the live widget won't populate. If you click on it, it says you need to sign in for this to start functioning, which is kind of annoying, especially if you are using a local account and you do want to see weather in the taskbar. So now they're changing that. So starting with the dev channel build 25262, the widgets panel should start functioning regardless of if you are signed into a Microsoft account or not. So that's good news for those of you who use local accounts and actually do want to see the weather on the taskbar. It's also bad news for those of you who were purposely using a local account because you didn't want any of the MSN stuff being fed to you. That's no longer going to be avoidable unless you uninstall the widgets panel, which I think is possible using PowerShell. But yeah, so that's one of the big changes with the widgets panel, which will, I assume they're making that change to increase their monthly active user statistics. But it means everybody's going to be able to see the weather on the taskbar now, which is pretty cool. And then they released build 25267 a week later, and that included some updates to the search icon. We talked about the search icon in the last episode quite a bit. This just adds to that slightly. They've rounded off the corners now. So, the edges, I guess. So instead of it being rounded corners, it's now just like a bubble. It's almost like a sort of pill shape, which is really nice. And they've also updated the Windows security dialog. So whenever you run a program for the first time and it asks to, access, when it asks to bypass the firewall, that was an old dialog up until this build, and now it's using a Windows 11 WinUI type looking interface, which is pretty cool. And that seems to be the trend with Windows 11 right now. They're slowly but surely getting through all of those legacy pop-ups and dialogues and giving them the One UI treatment. And that's what I think we're going to see in 2023 quite a bit. We'll get to that topic later in the show. But yes, so that's there for build 25267. And then there was also an insider beta channel build, which sort of brought all of that stuff to the beta channel. So most of this should show up in the Moment 2 updates, which we are expecting will begin rolling out in February and March. Regarding apps, Microsoft is finally rolling out the Windows 11 snipping tool update, which introduces screen recording. That was something they announced at this Windows event No, was it the Windows event or was it the Surface event? Whatever event, I think it was the Surface event in October. They sort of briefly showed off a version of snipping tool which did have a recording option, and that's how they announced it. Weirdly, but now it's finally in the Insider Dev channel, and I assume that will make its way down to beta channel and production over the next few months. So there we are. That's a recap of all of the Windows 11 stuff. Nothing too groundbreaking. I think the updates to the widgets panel are going to be quite nice because it does mean finally that widget icon in the corner will begin working for all users, regardless of if you are signed in with a Microsoft account or not. And that's that.
Sarah is asking, and we should point out that they're still doing their A/B testing on this, which means if you get one of these insider builds, I don't know what the odds are you're going to get these new features, but there are odds that you won't get the feature. So, and Microsoft is pretty transparent about this on its changelog on the insider blog, where it explains that some people will get these new features, some won't. And this is part of their continued A/B testing. And some features will be, even if you have the feature, it may look different than someone else's. Like they may be testing two versions of a feature, which you're kind of doing with the search bar thing. So it's a bit of a gamble that what you're going to get. So it is what it is. But if you don't see those features. It's easily
the worst part of the Insider program, the fact that they announced all these new features and every single one of them is an A/B test. I don't think there's ever been a feature in the last several months that has been like, hey, here's a new feature for everybody. Here it is. So every single one, for some reason, is always an A/B test. And
it's only really when it comes to the preview build, usually. And then it's about to just roll out.
So there we are. So that's the recap of the Windows 11 stuff. They are done releasing Windows 11 builds for the year, so we won't be getting any more dev or beta channel builds until 2023, which is fine. They usually go off for the holidays around this time anyway, so yes.
Nice. All right, Surface Hub upgrade. So you actually have the Surface Hub, which is always kind of fun.
I do.
But explain, so obviously you're kind of leaked this information, but an upgrade is apparently coming and how that's going to work, because I don't know if people remember how this works on the Surface Hub.
Yeah, so I've heard from sources that Microsoft is planning to ship its first upgraded compute cartridge for the Surface Hub 2 in 2023. I had heard originally that it would be the first half of 2023, but I'm never too confident on internal schedules at Microsoft, so these days I don't even give rough estimates because there's no point, because they usually slip. But yes, the compute cartridge is codenamed Upward, and I'm told it will include an 11th gen Intel processor. That is last gen quite considerably by the time it ships, but that's kind of Surface in a nutshell. And also considering how
actually it'll be 2 gens behind by the time it ships.
But because of what this device is and what its purpose is, I think it's perfectly fine. Like, enterprises won't care; they really won't. This is kind of the problem with Microsoft not having its own silicon, or at least own branded silicon, because on the Apple side, Apple does this all the time. It's like, hey, here's the A13, here's the A14 in a new iPad or whatever, but it doesn't matter because although it's a few gens old, it's Apple stuff, so and it's all like the same. Microsoft really needs that on the Intel AMD side. Unfortunately, they don't. So people see the headline 11th gen and go, "That's ridiculous! How dare they?" But I think for the customer that will be aimed at, which is enterprises, that's not going to be a problem. 11th gen is a huge upgrade over what's in the Surface Hub currently, which is an 8th gen laptop CPU. It is not powerful, very much not good. And so the 11th gen chip inside the Upward compute cartridge will be great. Now, I mentioned cartridge because this, at least as far as I'm aware, will not be a Surface Hub 3. I did specifically ask this, and everybody who I spoke to said, no, this appears to just be specifically the cartridge that you can buy that slots into the back of the Surface Hub. That's just getting a refresh, which makes sense, right? Unless they're going to update the display.
Because they haven't used it yet. They haven't used that feature yet.
Exactly, totally. And unless they're going to update the display or change the actual sort of products in any significant way, there's no need to ship a Surface Hub 3. The display is amazing, so why not just upgrade the components on the inside? That's what they're planning to do. Who knows what pricing will be? I'm assuming it will be quite expensive considering it is an enterprise product, and so you can like triple the price it should be just because it's for the enterprise. But yeah, it will be as simple as unscrewing a single screw on the back of the Surface Hub 2, pulling out the existing cartridge. You will be able to swap over your SSD as far as I'm aware. You screw that in, and then you slot the new cartridge back in, screw it into place, boot up the Surface Hub 2, and you should be upgraded with the latest processor and whatever other improvements it comes with. It is codenamed
And plus,
Upward. Sorry, go on.
yeah, I was going to say, plus it includes the integrated graphics, which will be Iris XE.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. I mean, I
which
guess
will
they
also
could
make a big difference.
They could do a compute cartridge with dedicated graphics, I guess, but I don't know if that would be the case for this. It is codenamed Upwards, which suggests to me that maybe this will enable the rotation feature on the Surface Hub 2. Remember when it was first announced, like, hey, it can do this cool swift rotation stuff? That's actually not enabled on the Surface Hub 2 currently. You can't do it. It's locked in place with the current compute cartridge. I'm sure there's a way to get it unlocked, but I haven't dived into that yet. So the question is, will this be tied with some sort of software update for the Surface Hub 2? And I think it could be. Surface Hub 2 currently still runs Windows 10. It runs Windows 10 Team. It's on build 19.0 or 19100 or 19045 or something like that. It's on a Windows 10 build. So it hasn't gotten Windows 11 yet, and maybe Microsoft is working on a Windows 11 update for the Surface Hub, and that would be a great sort of way to time this compute cartridge upgrade with the Windows 11 update for Surface Hub Team OS, whatever they call it. But that's just sort of speculation. I haven't actually heard that's the plan, but wouldn't surprise me if it is, and that would be pretty cool. So that's everything I sort of know about the Surface Hub 2 and the future of that in 2023. It still seems to be something they're pushing quite heavily. I'm sure it's doing very well for them, considering it's super expensive, and enterprises seem to love it. Apparently, I've been talking to people who own these, and they love it. They think it's great, and I can totally see why, having owned one now. It is awesome to have, and in a meeting room, I can see why it's so useful. I just use mine for like Google Meet.
Right.
But yeah.
Yeah, and for was it $19,000, almost 20,000 for the big one? Yeah, companies don't want to buy that, mount it, have it professionally installed and everything, only to be like 2 years later, like, oh, we got a new one. Like,
yeah, exactly.
So this modularity thing, and this is just how enterprise works, and this segues nicely into the HoloLens 3 discussion. So Microsoft put out a big kind of blog post, press release talking about momentum with HoloLens 2 and its partnerships with Toyota. And what's kind of neat about this blog post is it's like, yeah, it's a lot of like, patting themselves on the back, but it gives real world examples of how this is being used. And I think that's super important here, because of all the AR systems in the world, Microsoft's is the only one that's actually being mass deployed by many corporations. And so, I mentioned how Intel uses it in their fabs for training and repair, and Toyota is using it, and engineers are using it, hospitals are using it, they're using it for surgery. And it's just like, and so I think it's important that Microsoft actually shows like, hey, this isn't just some like theoretical technology that someday will be useful. These companies are using it right now. And by the way, here's what they have to say about it. And so that was the majority of the post, but towards the end, there was something that they don't mention HoloLens 3, which I think is, important to point out here, but you can definitely read between the lines here. So Microsoft's vice president of mixed reality, Scott Evans, says, has promised customers that the company will continue to deliver new versions of HoloLens when the time is right, and that the next HoloLens needs to be a more meaningful update to make any sense for customers. Quote, no one wants to be obsoleted for 10% better capabilities. They don't need a successor yet, but they want to know it'll be there at the right time, unquote. Microsoft reckons customers aren't yet yearning for new hardware and therefore don't feel it necessary to deliver a HoloLens 3 yet. Evans continued, quote, we're just looking for the right design point to make a meaningful update. They want a successor device that's going to enable an even higher return on investments. And its focus, and Microsoft goes on to say that they're focused on improving the displays, tracking sensors, and battery life for the next HoloLens. So, there's no like bombshells there outside of the fact that, HoloLens 3 as it was being developed, and we heard it was being canceled, sounds like it was more of an iterative update, which wouldn't be unheard of. But at the same time, this is a at minimum $3,500 headset. And I say at minimum because there are two other versions. One's a more industrial one that goes, I think, around $4,500 or $4,200. And then there's one that actually has like a hard hat built in. It's really meant for industrial use that starts, I think, around $5,500. And so companies, just like with Surface Hub, don't want to be buying these things every couple of years. because they're super expensive. Or rather, if they're going to buy it every couple of years, it needs to be a substantial upgrade, right? This isn't like an iPhone. You don't want to just be, oh, the processor is slightly faster this year and we made the screen slightly brighter. That may work in the consumer space or for devices that are only, $1,000 or less, especially when subsidized by carriers. But for a mass deployed device like HoloLens, companies want something more substantial. Otherwise, why upgrade? And then Microsoft sits on a bunch of stock that they're not selling. So they're obviously taking their time here. But this, again, goes to highlight the vast difference between enterprise markets and consumer markets, which we've hammered over and over on this podcast, that, when it comes to enterprise laptops, for instance, companies buy them and then they keep them for like 5 years, unless they get destroyed. This is why ThinkPads are so popular, or HP's EliteBooks. And so, but I would also argue these companies have also greatly modernize those devices because they also understand the modern world today. People have a work laptop, but back in the day, you'd have a business laptop and you didn't need quad speakers with discrete amplifiers and Dolby Atmos, right? Because it'd be like, this is a work laptop. You can do PowerPoint on it. What do you need that for? But increasingly, people are using laptops for a lot more, especially remote video conferencing, where such things are important. And so all these companies have been doubling down, making these laptops, basically cross versions of high-end consumer laptops with the business features. And of course, the Elite Dragonfly, which I reviewed recently, is a prime example of that, right? But when it comes to HoloLens, it's the same thing that applies. Yeah, as consumers, we're like, oh my God, it's been a year, or it's been 2 years. Why haven't they upgraded? But they're looking, basically what they're saying is HoloLens 3 is probably going to look or feel dramatically differently from HoloLens 2. And it's going to bring a real advancement in features so that companies who have HoloLens 2 are going to look at it and be like, ew, what are we doing with this thing? We need that thing now. I think that's a smart business plan, especially because, again, this is enterprise. It has nothing to do with the consumer market. And so they don't need to do the advertising, and who are they competing against, right? So, of course, this raises the question, I know, for our audience, is like, well, when is the consumer version going to happen? And I still don't see, and I think Microsoft's in agreement here, as well as the rest of the industry, what that play is yet. Yeah, Apple is rumored to be releasing a hybrid VR, AR system that's still going to be around $3,000, the rumor says. It won't be something you leave your house with. It'll be used in the living room. And it'll be interesting. I have no doubt what Apple releases will be impressive hardware-wise, and they'll probably have some killer apps. I imagine FaceTime is going to be kind of like one of them, where you can do sort of, talk to your loved ones, right? And I can see the angle there. But I think Apple also has realistic expectations, and most people aren't going to drop $3,000 on a device that you occasionally use in your living room. That's a big ask. And I think they know that. So it's mostly going to be aimed sort of at developers and early adopters and people experimenting with how to push this category further. And as the technology shrinks down and gets better, then maybe a more affordable consumer version that you put on and then you can leave your house with will be on the horizon. But I still think that's years away. I think that's maybe 2026 at the earliest. All this stuff keeps getting pushed back, but I think the technology is just not developing fast enough. / there's still no killer app yet for this. And I still don't know what one would be. I know it sounds cool, like I said, walking around the world and you have holograms floating around you. But what's the value play there? Like, what's it actually going to do? And so I think it's going to take this is turning out to be a little bit more difficult than a smartphone. I think the smartphone was almost an easier sell to do than this kind of technology, especially since it's so expensive and you have like severe limitations with battery life and connectivity and what they're able to do. But at least we know, HoloLens 3, they're going to continue making their own hardware. We don't know the status of, speaking of consumer, the Samsung Microsoft partnership that's been reported out there, that Samsung is reportedly building hardware that will be run with its Android phones, but it's using, Microsoft's know-how and knowledge of sensors and technology around these headsets. We don't know what that thing is, what it's going to cost, when its ETA is, or really anything about it. We just know the reporting says that's a thing that's going to happen. So if you are looking for the consumer early adopter angle that may rival Apple's, that may be it, but it's too early to say what it's going to be. My hunch is whatever Samsung releases will be technologically probably less impressive than what Apple has, because Apple's has something like 14 cameras on it or something. It's absurd. It won't be that, but I think Samsung's may be more pragmatic and something that you can kind of actually use when you're, normal life stuff, right? And so we'll have to wait and see though what happens with that. But that's sort of the expectation going on there. Zach, you have any thoughts on all this?
Yeah, I do feel like these comments from Microsoft were sort of deliberate, if you will. Like this is clearly a response to the reports from earlier this year, which did claim that the HoloLens 3 had been cancelled, which I fully believe. I don't think Microsoft hasn't cancelled HoloLens 3. At the very least, I should probably rephrase that. The version of HoloLens that was supposed to ship this year, because as far as I'm aware, my sources have now said that the HoloLens 3 was on target for this year's release at the very least, or announcement. That product has been cancelled. That's not happening now.
Yeah.
But this is actually funny because this is exactly what happened to the HoloLens 2 originally. If you remember, there were reports that after the HoloLens 1 came out, that there was going to be a HoloLens 2 in 2017 or 2018. I think it was 2018. And they scrapped it. They said, no, we're not going to do this. We want to make it a more meaningful update. And then the HoloLens 2 that was announced was what we have now. And that was quite a big leap.
It was a big leap. I mean, just the design was way better, but in terms of just comfort and wearability, I mean, that alone was a huge jump. And for those who don't know, they moved a lot of the components to the back of the head and sort of split up the computer. So it wasn't all in the front and wasn't front heavy. And when you put it on, it felt like, and Zach and I both got to wear it, it felt like you're putting on a baseball hat. And it was just like, it was perfectly balanced in the weight, and it wasn't all resting on the bridge of your nose. It really felt like something, you can like wear this for actually a substantial amount of time. And that alone made it worth it. But then all the sensor upgrades that they did, of course, and they even added, LTE as an option and everything.
Tracking.
I think made it
like the HoloLens 1. People forget the HoloLens 1 doesn't have any hand tracking. To interact with things, you have to look at what you want and then do like a motion to select it. Whereas HoloLens 2, you can grab things, and that's like
it's not even hand tracking, right? It's finger tracking.
Yeah, like you can like even type on like a floating keyboard and stuff. It's amazing. HoloLens 1 can't do none of that. It's crazy. People seem to sort of assume HoloLens 1 can do that too. No, it can't. It really can't. Yeah. So that was a huge leap forward as well. And then so whatever they had planned for the HoloLens 3, I guess it wasn't going to be enough for them to sort of warrant it shipping. And Alex Kipman has now left, so that the HoloLens lead is gone, and so there's probably new leadership there, and there's a new vision for what this hardware can and will be. Also, I think it's really interesting to see what the competition is doing in this space. Meta just released the Meta Quest Pro, which is a hybrid AR/VR headset. But before I say my thought there, Apple's rumored headset is also supposed to be an AR/VR headset hybrid. Who knows what Samsung's doing? I assume it'll be the same thing. It does appear that the way that this form factor is going currently is to be a VR headset with AR capabilities. Right now, HoloLens is a sort of weird sort of outstander where it's AR first. AR only, rather. It's not a hybrid device. It only does AR. Yeah. Whereas these upcoming headsets do both, and they are VR first with cameras that allow you to see the real world and place holograms into the real world through the cameras within the headset. So I'll be curious to see if Microsoft is planning to adopt that as well, because Alex Kipman said this a few years ago, right? He was like, the goal is to have a hybrid device that can do both AR and VR. And I'm assuming, at the time, I imagine he sort of thought maybe we can get it through, a device that does AR with a shield that comes down to enable VR. It's probably cheaper and easier to do it the other way.
I think he was hinting at they have that glass that where you run a charge through it, it darkens, and apparently some really advanced airplanes, and you can get this even in your house for a lot of money. Right. Yeah. But it's how to make that more affordable. I will say though, when he was talking about that stuff, Windows Mixed Reality was also, a big player in this, or at least that was kind of the goal. Windows Mixed Reality still exists, but it's clearly on the back burner as I think they wait to see again a more pragmatic use of this. That would be interesting. But they already did most of the legwork there. But yeah, I don't know if VR in terms of what Microsoft is aiming for, plays much of a role yet. But we'll see. There is still their mesh Microsoft Teams integration where they have what is, it also works with Meta as well. But this idea that, you put on a headset and you're in like a virtual meeting and all that kind of stuff. I still think sounds kind of interesting, but at the same time, it's like that seems either years off or just something that not a lot of people are going to probably use. I'll also say that the important distinction here between all these companies and Microsoft is all of these companies are using their product. It's not like they just sell it to them and all right, later. They're constantly interacting with them and getting feedback about the device. So whereas like we may like, oh, they should do this and they should do that. Like they're dealing with these big companies who are spending serious cash on these devices, and these companies are telling Microsoft what they want and all that stuff. And that's what Microsoft is sort of reacting to. And it sounded like, I bet Microsoft's like, hey, we're thinking about doing a new version. We can upgrade these kind of things. And these are all probably NDA discussions. And I bet a lot of these companies are like, it'd be nice, but I don't think we're necessarily would buy those, in which case that's probably informed Microsoft's decision to step back and be like, hey, let's just take our time on this a little bit more to make this, quote, a meaningful update. And so, like I said, just different markets on this stuff. This isn't consumer yet, but I still think we're years away from consumer.
Yeah, the one thing that just going back to the whole AR VR thing, the one thing that doing it as a VR headset with AR capabilities allows for is for a much larger field of view, because the screens are so close to your eyes, you can basically fill up the entire field of view there. The problem with HoloLens has been, and it was improved with HoloLens 2, but it's still not amazing, is the field of view. It's very small because of how it projects holograms using whatever tech it's using at a resolution that doesn't make it look terrible. It is in a small field of view. But if it was, 2 displays, which is what VR headsets are. VR headsets are just 2 displays that sit very close to your face, very close to your eyes. That allows for a much wider field of view because you are so close to the face. I'll be very interested to see what HoloLens 3 ends up being whenever that shows up. Who knows when that will be? It could be next year. It could be the year after. It will be a while, I think, is kind of what they were trying to say to their customers. And that's, for their market, totally fine. Remember, this is an enterprise market, and enterprises apparently aren't asking for a new HoloLens yet. We'll see if the Meta Quest Pro and the upcoming Apple headset lights a fire under Microsoft, because I believe it might. Because, enterprises use iPhones. I'm sure they're going to be quite interested in Apple's thing as well. So
possibly. I still think Apple, they're going to be consumer market first. Apple's foray into enterprise is there. You can make the argument that, MacBooks and iPhones are definitely more in use today by companies than they were 5 years ago. That's absolutely true. But I don't think there's any concern about ThinkPads and EliteBooks being displaced by MacBooks. The people who are using MacBooks in these companies are high-end executives, and people who, can afford a posh, svelte laptop that doesn't need to have like spill protection, drop protection, good warranty, ability to be repaired instantly, all that kind of stuff. So I don't know. I don't see Apple going into that direction, especially because the way Microsoft has gone so hard after those companies, and they have such a huge infrastructure. Don't forget, Microsoft does everything with Azure and everything through this headset. And I don't see how necessarily Apple competes there, but we'll see what happens. Going on. Oh, look at that. Sorry, we have 2 ad reads this week. So we'll do one now and one a little bit later. But hey, we got to pay the bills, and our podcast is growing, so it helps. This is a new one, actually. This is from Masterworks. And this is actually kind of related to Microsoft. You never knew this about Paul Allen. If you don't know, Paul Allen, one of the founders of Microsoft, passed away recently. The legendary co-founder of Microsoft didn't just spark a technological revolution or was behind a net worth in excess of $20 billion. Yeah, he had a lot of cash. No, he was also a collector of some of the rarest art in the world. A collection that just sold for a record-breaking $1.6 billion. Could you imagine having $1.6 billion in just art? Weird. Anyway, with 58% of it selling above its highest estimates, even as we face a potential recession. Why? because fine art has a near zero correlation to classic investments, including the tech stocks that have lost over $3 trillion this year. But we're not Paul Allen. How do we use art to possibly protect and grow our wealth? Well, with Masterworks. Masterworks qualifies each of their paintings with the SEC so they can split them into shares for you to invest in. They've sold five paintings this year alone, with the last three delivering 17, 21, and 33% net returns. Masterwork returns speak for themselves, and there's even a wait list right now, which is true. If you go to masterworks.com, you'll see there's an invite you have to do. But you can skip that invite by going to masterworks.com and using code WCP for Windows Central Podcast, WCP at masterworks.com. And if you go there, you can skip the wait. And so how I understand this, so I'm going off the script now, and it's actually kind of a cool idea. So I think one of the, the big things that's happened in the last couple of years are these microtransaction apps. There's one I use called Griffin. I've talked about in this podcast before. It's on iOS. I don't know if it's on Android yet. But what Griffin does is it monitors your spending on whatever you want, a credit card, a checking account, whatever. And what you spend your money on then gets a percentage of that gets put aside, and then they invest that for you in that company that you spent money with, which is kind of interesting because in theory, if you're buying things for companies you support, buying their stock then might be a thing. And of course, you have some leeway too on where you put that money. So I've been doing that for a while now, and it gives you you can see how much you've invested, of course, and then your grand total, and you can pull it out at any time. So that's one version. There's, of course, the Robinhood way, which is you just go and you buy stocks yourself directly, which, gets rid of the middle guy and everything. And now this is a new way. So what it's doing is, it's taking famous, there's a Banksy painting, and, Banksy's pretty popular, and it's on there. And so what you're not buying Banksy's painting yourself, you're buying a percentage of Banksy's painting, which is pretty wild. And then if the value goes up and it sells all that, you get a return on it. I think I never thought about doing art like that. I think it's kind of an ingenious way. And what they're saying about the, art, let's face it, people buying art are super wealthy, and these people aren't necessarily affected by, say, a recession, right? So art doesn't go down, and, the Mona Lisa is still worth whatever it is, despite, if the economy crashes, right? It's still going to be worth a lot of money because it's not seen as a commodity of sort of other things, which are directly affected by these pricing. So it's basically that argument that it's like gold, so it's always gold's always going to be worth gold, and that's why people try to invest in it. So I think it's kind of a cool idea. Like I said, masterworks.com, go there, type in WCP, and you can skip the invites. I actually think I might do this because as I'm getting older, I'm trying to put my money into smarter ways. And directly investing in stocks, of course, is risky. It's why people do hedge funds and spread out their money where they can, 401ks and these kind of things. And this seems like a safer bet. And so your return might, the returns are pretty solid, apparently 20 and 30%, but it may not be as, valuable as buying some stock from a startup that explodes. But many of us aren't, savvy enough to get in on that stuff right away. But if you are, whatever, go to masterworks.com, WCP, check it out. I think I'm going to check it out as well. Zach, do you invest any of your money, or you're too young?
I'm too young. I don't even know where to begin.
Yeah, it's a thing. Yeah,
I tried crypto for a bit, and that didn't go well. So.
I had Twitter stock early on. Not that it went up very much, and it was actually kind of funny because then I ran into some tax issues while I was in New York, and I just never settled it, and they just seized my stocks.
Yeah, damn.
It's like, wow, okay. I mean, it wasn't it was fine because I was like, well, okay, well, I guess I paid that off. So, but it's not like I was super rich off of Twitter stock. I didn't, it wasn't worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. I was like, all right, whatever. Enjoy New York. And now I'm out of New York, so that's fine. Anyway, that's kind of funny. Let's move on to what's going on with OneNote, unified OneNote UI. So they've been slowly progressing down this route. We've talked about OneNote recently. They have a full screen mode now, which is pretty wild. I actually like that mode. So that's, if you don't know, in the new OneNotes, you can enable although you have to go into the insider version, but you can enable this like full screen version of OneNote where it hides everything. You just have a blank page, and it's for inking, right? And for note taking. And apparently that was in one of the old OneNotes, but then it was removed in this new version, and it's kind of like back again. But it's perfect for those of us who like to take strictly notes without having all the other OneNote gobbledygook around it while we're doing so, which is what drove me to use other inking apps. But Zach, what's going on now with this unified UI and all that?
Yeah, so for those who need the context for this is, Microsoft announced a while back that they're killing off the UWP version of OneNote, which was arguably the better version of OneNote. And so the last several months, they've been slowly sort of bringing over the best of UWP OneNote to the classic legacy version of OneNote, which is no longer legacy. It's now the main OneNote because the UWP version is going away. That said, it is going to stick around until 2025 when Windows 10 exits support. The UWP version of OneNote will do the same, but the UWP version of OneNote will no longer be getting new features, so that's kind of a bummer there. Anyway, the Win32 OneNote has historically looked ugly compared to the UWP version. The UWP version was very clean, very nice, very lightweight, and the desktop version, the Win32 version, just hasn't been. They've slowly been working on improving that. You know, they've added some Mika blur effects to OneNote recently on the Win32 side. And they have announced in the last couple of weeks that they are finally actually going to bring over, for the most part, it's not a one-to-one comparison, but they are going to bring over the sort of essence of the UWP OneNote to the legacy version of OneNote. So what that will do, the differences between these, I'll try and describe them to you, is legacy OneNote puts your notebook in like a drop-down menu. It has tabs along the top and then pages within tabs on the right side. It's the worst design for a note-taking app I have ever seen. UWP OneNote has the notebooks on the left, pages on the just next to that, and then the page itself in the middle of the app. Beautiful, simple, works. It's fantastic. They are bringing that essentially over to the desktop version of OneNote. So they will get rid of that tab bar on the top, which is stupid. They'll move over the page list to the left. They'll drop down the notebook page so it's now on display constantly, and it will look much cleaner as a result. So great news. That my biggest complaint with the desktop version of OneNote has been the UI. It's currently terrible, has been terrible. And, you know, Microsoft announced, they were like, yeah, we've been working with our educators and they say we should do this, so we're doing this. I was like, educators? I'm not an educator, and I've been complaining about this for 100 years. The whole reason I used UWP OneNote in the first place was because the UI was so nice. And so they've finally listened, and they are now finally going to do the necessary work to bring that UI or that UI layout at least over to legacy OneNote. So good news for me and anybody else who uses OneNote. Bad news if you like the legacy version of OneNote for some reason. If you do, you're crazy and kind of weird.
So there's two things that segues into that I forgot to add to the show notes I want to talk about briefly. But one thing I just wanted, this is an inside thing with Zach and I. So we were talking about Mastodon before the podcast, and I told him about this tool that someone recommended to me called MOA. And it's on GitLab. It's called GitLab Fed Stoa /MOA, MOA. So you can look it up. But what it does is it cross-posts between Twitter and Mastodon, which is kind of cool. So if you want to slowly get into Mastodon, it's one way to sort of maintain both timelines. So Zach, we had it backwards, and now I'm reading the directions. I just realized that this is like this was a logic test for us that we both kind of failed, like if then that and then that. What it does, if you post to Mastodon, it'll repost it to Twitter, not the other way around.
Yeah, sure.
So, and it worked. So,
Okay.
so I was just happy about that. I was confused. Anyway, so that's just a kind of a cool tool if you're looking for social network stuff. The other thing I wanted to talk about was the new Amazon Kindle Scribe, which I've been meaning to kind of do an article on, but I've been so busy with other stuff. And to be honest, I haven't used it as much as I wanted to. But that came out, and I had ordered one. I pre-ordered one. And if you don't know, this is their biggest Kindle yet. I believe it's 11 inches. It's the largest e-ink with the highest PPI, as far as I know. So I think, like I said, around 11 inches. I think the PPI is around 300. And so everybody wants to compare it to Remarkable 2, which is the darling child right now. And so this is this replaces sort of for a lot of people the Amazon DX, which was another or Kindle DX, which was a big screen Kindle. It was one of the first ones. It was a large screen. And there's still a diehard community with that one because they want that large screen. So this is bigger than that. And I forgot, maybe it's only 10 inches. Sorry, it might be 10 inches. But so this came out. It's around $330. I got the pen, and I just got the cover in. And what's cool about it, of course, is a giant e-reader, but it allows you, as the name implies, with Scribe and a pen, allows you to take notes on it. And they made it so it feels like paper when you're writing on it, all that kind of stuff. And I got to give it a huge thumbs up. So I got it, obviously, for when I go to events like CES and I'm talking to companies. I can use this thing to take notes on. I know what you're thinking. Well, why not use like a Surface Go 3? Totally, I could. But then I'm kind of carrying around 2 PCs. Because I'm going to have my full laptop with me. I don't want to just use a Surface Go 3 while I'm at CES. That's just my eyes, no. And so then I have to have 2 PCs with me. And then the battery life on the Go 3, of course, is nowhere near what the Scribe gets, which is like a month. So it's like a big difference right there. And also the Scribe is way lighter. It's like half the weight of the Go 3. And yeah, that matters when you're holding this thing for a while. And so the Scribe, I feel like e-ink note-taking devices are just way more purpose-built if you're taking notes than it's nice if you have a Windows computer and you need to use it at that moment. I think it's great. I have used it. I do use it like that. And it's great in a pinch or something like that and you want to do it. But I think something like the Kindle Scribe is, even better. And it has a side lit screen, so it has little LEDs on it, so you can even read this thing in the dark, which is really kind of cool. I've never had that before. The hardware quality is good. They also finally, this shouldn't be like, oh, they did this because this should be expected, but it is Type-C. So, because even my last Kindle White was micro USB, which is just like so painful. But not only is this Type-C, it's like Type-C fast charge. So you plug it in and it went from like 50% to like 100% in like 30 minutes, which is, if you've had a Kindle before, it's like, and Kindles would take hours to recharge. Sure, they last a month, but still. So I'm really happy with this thing, and I'll put it really through a test, like I said, when I go to CES at the beginning of January and use it. And I'll have probably more on the site because there seems to be a lot of interest in it from a lot of people. And of course, it makes a great e-reader. Yeah, I have Surface Duo, and that's fine. Duo is a great experience, but this thing is way bigger, obviously. So I think it's a better reading experience for obvious reasons. In terms of comparing it to Remarkable, Remarkable is a more robust note-taking device, and I don't have one. But it has more stuff in it for note taking and more pen controls and brushes and all that kind of jazz. So if you're like really like diagramming and drawing, I think Remarkable 2 is probably the better bet right now. But you're not going to get any of the Kindle ebook stuff, right? It could do like PDF books, which is the open source version, which some people are really into, which is cool. I'm not. I like the convenience of Kindle because I'm an Amazon slave. But the reason I didn't go with Remarkable 2 also, it's like it's literally a couple $100 more than the Kindle Scribe. Like I think it's like $550 when you throw in the pen and the cover and all that. And it's the PPI is not as high and the screen is technically smaller. It's just like, so and the limitation. So the note taking is very basic on the Kindle Scribe. Excuse me. But I'm fine with that. That's all I actually kind of wanted. There is deeper integration coming. They are connecting up to Microsoft 365 and Office, so you will be able to sync your notes back to like Microsoft Word or something like that. I forgot how it's going to work exactly, but Microsoft is probably shouldn't be a surprise, teaming up with Amazon a little bit here. Like, oh, well, we're got to be there too. I don't know if OneNote's going to come there. I wouldn't be surprised, though, if it does. But what I'm saying is sort of the limitations on Scribe right now that are out there are all software, right? So like, oh, it doesn't have many paintbrushes or as many, presets for writing. Sure, but they can literally just add that through software updates, and I'm pretty positive they're going to. But for me right now, I'm actually very happy with that. I'm looking forward to the deeper Microsoft integration. We'll see how that goes. Of course, I'll cover it on the site. But yeah, if you're looking at the Kindle Scribe, and so far I'm like really happy with it. I think it's sort of ideal for, at least my job. I think for students it would be amazing. God, I would kind of want to go back to college just to have something like this again.
Nice.
Zach, do you have thoughts on any of that? Sorry, I got to take a drink.
The Kindle Scribe was really interesting when it was announced. I thought because they announced it alongside some Microsoft integrations, didn't they? They were like, yeah, so you'll be able to like ink onto Word documents and stuff using this, which I thought was really interesting. Who knows? Maybe they'll expand that to like OneNote in the future. OneNote on the Kindle Scribe would be amazing. That'd be the best note-taking device in the world.
Yeah, it has a MediaTek processor, and it's actually, oh yeah, that's two things I want to talk about quickly. Sorry, I don't want to cut you off, but in terms of like page turning, all that, it's pretty quick. The important thing I like about the pen is the latency is really low.
Yeah.
Like it really does feel natural. It feels on par with writing on a Windows tablet. And I think that's a big deal because I think people are expecting with e-ink you would have like this weird delay, which would be terrible. No, the ink flows right out of the pen. It feels really good. And they really did make it feel like paper when you're writing on it, which is kind of cool, the way they manipulated the texture on it.
Nice. Yeah, no, it is an interesting device, and it's a direct response to the Scribe. No, what's the rewrite
Remarkable
or the write? Remarkable, yeah, it's it's just that. But that's because I think Amazon saw that product making the rounds and were like, we can do that, and so they're gonna kill Remarkable. So goodbye, Remarkable.
I mean, there's truth to that, right? And we can hem and haw about giant corporations ruling things, but at the end of the day, it's about companies delivering products in competition that are either better value, more affordable, or just do better stuff. And that's, I guess, where we can segue into Microsoft Super App. So this was a story that came out via The Information, if I recall. Yeah, I believe it was The Information. And it's interesting because they're saying that Microsoft is looking to let's see. Yeah, it was The Information that they're looking to make a super app. And so I wrote an editorial about this. And first of all, it's weird because it sounds like Microsoft already has a super app. But let me step back. What is a super app? Super apps mostly come out of Eastern markets, specifically China. And they have a few of them. WeChat is the most well-known. And it's, I think Windows Phone users remember WeChat back in the day because it came to our platform. It was just another like a messenger service, but that was like in 2012, 2014. It's really changed. It does that still, but now people like do everything through it. Like they go shopping, they plan vacations, they pay bills through it. They coordinate. Companies run customer service through it, kind of like how companies use Twitter sometimes for customer service. They'll DM you and all that kind of stuff. They use it for that, and so it's really become this sort of like literally people open up WeChat and just stay in it all day, and they do all their transactions. They pay bills through it, and that's what it's meant by a super app. And there are like a few of them in China now. As you can imagine, Western companies are envious of this because what they want is an app that you open and stay in all day, right? That's the whole game. They want you to use TikTok and stay in TikTok for 30 minutes because you'll see more ads and all that kind of stuff. And they'll collect more data. Facebook wants you to be on Facebook all day. Like that's the point. And so all these companies, Facebook included, have sort of tried this, right? Facebook introduced a marketplace. They brought news there. What do you think that was for? The idea was to keep your eyeballs on Facebook.com for as long as you can. So Western companies have been eyeing this for a very long time. But here's the difference and why I think all this stuff is destined to fail, which is in China. The reason why WeChat can thrive and do this is because China literally banned every other competition out there. Like Google, you can't use YouTube, you can't use Telegram, you can't use Twitter, you can't use like Facebook, you can't use like all the things that we use every single day is like not available to them. So yeah, when you ban everything and then you're like, hey, we put it all into this one app, it's not a surprise that people are going to gravitate towards that. But I think especially in America and Western markets, we like the idea of separate apps for everything, right? We discussed that recently with Windows Phone, like if that were to return. Like you don't even need, 1,000 apps. You just need that one app that you need on your phone. And if Windows Phone didn't have it, the phone wasn't good for you. And sure, there are PWAs now, but most people don't know about that. They want an app. I could be like, you can go to your bank and use the website on your phone. Most people are going to want an app that does that, right? And so we're a very app-centric sort of culture right now, and there's just too much competition. Like you're not going to be able to recreate this now. It's too late. These services are just too big, almost too big to fail. Although I would argue that it comes down to, is there a better alternative out there? So Microsoft apparently is kind of going down this route. And the reason I found it surprising, and I was a little skeptical of the information's reporting, and to be fair, I didn't get to read it because it was behind a paywall, but they have a super app already, basically called Start. For those of you who don't remember, this was the Microsoft News app rebranded last year called Start. If you go into that thing, that app is absurd. It does news, it does weather, it does your Microsoft account stuff. It does, of course, Bing and search. It's its own browser. You can literally set Start as your default web browser on Android. I don't know if people know that. It's also now able to handle SMS. You can actually set it as your default SMS client, which I tried. And it did intercept my SMS. It came in with a notification, and then I opened it, and I don't know where it went.
I think it's region based. I think in certain regions you can use it as an actual SMS client. I don't think it works in the US though, not properly.
Well, on my Pixel, I was able to set it as that. But yeah, so it does SMS. It does shopping. There's the math thing in it. You can use it solves math equations for you. You can either with your fingertip draw on an equation, or you can literally take a photo of a math equation and it'll not only solve it for you, it's going to explain how to do it, and then it'll give you further examples. It's great for students. You can even do a thing which I haven't used, but I just discovered when I was writing this article. You can take photos of your receipts of items purchased, and then it like gives you money back for it, which is like, what? There's gas stuff in there. It's just like a billion things in this app. It's absolutely crazy. And so that's exactly what a super app is. So when the information's like, oh, Microsoft's working on this, I'm like, they kind of already have this. Now, granted, and I put this in the end of their article, I'm like, the one thing that is keeping people from using Microsoft is it's not a social network. There's no messaging to it. And I guess that's what, and the information apparently was saying that too, because they did consider Start. They said, no, this is like a separate project, although I don't know all the fine details around it. So,
yeah, I can give you
they'll
my.
Probably just put it in Skype. It'll probably be Teams or Skype, right? It's just going to be. They'll probably integrate Teams into it, is my guess.
So here's my insight into this. When the Microsoft Start stuff was announced, I was told from sources that this was their attempt at a super app. When was Microsoft Start announced? Was that earlier this year? I think it was 2020.
September 2021.
Okay, so last year. So as of last year, Microsoft Start was the attempt at the super app. There may be a new super app attempt now in play internally, but I think it would be weird for them to instantly restart that project only a year in after building out this app, which is quite complex, as Dan just mentioned. This wasn't something they threw together in a weekend. This was something they were working on for quite a while. To throw that all away to start again so quickly, I think would be a waste of everyone's time and effort. So my guess is maybe this social network aspect just gets integrated into the Start app more than them rebuilding it from the ground up as something else. I think Start is the app. I fully believe that. But maybe they're going to enhance it with more stuff and sort of re-push it in 2023 as a much more social networky type thing. Which, to be fair, with the downfall of Twitter, I think there is space for a new social network on the market.
Yeah, absolutely.
Go on.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think your analysis is right. It would be weird for them just to like throw everything out a Start. And rebrand and all that kind of stuff, especially since they just rebranded. Although this is Microsoft, so who knows? We always have to throw that caveat in. But it would make sense. I could totally see them integrating Teams into this, right? Teams chat. That could happen. They may shift around the UI, cleaning it up a little bit, and give it a new fresh coat of paint, But I think fundamentally this is just going to be all what is essentially Bing services all in one app. And there's even wallpaper in there. You can get wallpaper for your phone. Like it's I know Start is, I don't love it, but it is also technologically impressive. And it's like, if you haven't tried it while it's on iOS, it's on Android, go into it and just start exploring. You can be like, what the hell? Like, why is there this much stuff in this thing? Like, I had no idea. And they did really jam a lot of really interesting tools that you really kind of can't get anywhere. And so I give them credit for that. I'm still skeptical, though, of such an app dominating. And this isn't necessarily because, it's Microsoft and they're lame. I just don't see it as a cultural thing as it happening. That said, this is also a dream of, and I hate to say it, Zach, this is Elon Musk's dream, too.
It's true.
He calls it the X app,
Yeah.
because he's super cool. And apparently he's been dreaming about this ever since the PayPal days, but he wants to integrate payments. And then people were talking crypto, God, all into Twitter. It's just going to be like everything you don't. It's like what they did with Instagram. We were all happy with Instagram, just photos of Polaroids and retro looking photos of your coffee and your friends. And that's all it was. And then it turned into this business, and it's got a store. Now there's videos and there's reels, and it's like all this crap. And, none of us really like using Instagram anymore. That's just what's going to happen with Twitter. Twitter was a place where you could just go on and complain about Twitter, which you still do. But, and the value of Twitter was going to talk to celebrities and famous people and journalists and just having them interacting with you. But I don't know what's going to happen there. So the super app concept, you're going to see, floating around. Maybe I'll eat crow on this one and I'll be wrong that, this catches on. I just think it's too late to sort of get this much stuff in front of people.
Yeah, the whole concept I don't even like. I don't want to live in a single app. I like having different apps, different things. And I think most of the Western market does.
Yeah, because this idea, like, you can't, and for all the people who are, and I know as this thing with Elon Musk starts to build up with his X app, people go back, yeah, it's awesome. Like, you can't be anti-Google because they're collecting all your data, or anti-Facebook for the same reason, and support super apps. Now, Microsoft, I would argue, at least they're a little bit better with your data. Like, they're not, they are monetizing it, but they're not being as shady. Like, they don't have as many complaints against them, but they still are, right? It's still, that's the point. But like, if you go into like, say, like Twitter turns into your banking app and all this kind of stuff, and you're paying your, like, do you really want all your data centralized to one app that if it gets hacked, oh my God, like, people have access to everything? Sure, there'll be security bridges and stuff like that, but like, I just don't see how. I find it would be very hypocritical for everything that we're doing in the West. This idea of like, oh, there's monopolies and we got to worry about all this data collection and privacy. And people are like, yeah, give me a super app. What are you, a moron? Like, that's exactly what you don't want. Like, it's nice having a separate bank app from your PayPal app, from your Twitter app, because there's no overlap between those kind of things, right? So I don't know. We'll see what happens. I never underestimate how dumb people are, I guess, when it comes
Someone
to
in chat just mentioned correctly that the Start app isn't a super app. It isn't extensible. It needs an extensible platform. And I'll say, yeah, you're totally right. But I will say that the app does have an apps section. And I don't think it's open to anyone to just build for it. I think you have to, Microsoft picks and chooses what goes there. But I think it is extensible. I just don't think it's openly extensible, at least not currently. And that may be part of what the information is supporting here. Maybe they are planning to expand that. So
yeah, that's a good point.
More developers can jump in and actually build things for it. Not that I think they will, but yeah, it's super interesting. I am looking through this app now. It is bonkers what this app does. Like, in the app section, there's 6, 12, 18, there's 21 different options in the apps area here for all kinds of things that you wouldn't think you would want to use this app for, like downloads.
Yeah.
Why would I look at my downloads in here? But yeah, it's almost 100. The Start app is the super app that they want to be the super app effort. I just think they're going.
Yeah, it's not going to all happen in day one, but clearly they're building things. Kevin asks, what Start features exist? For me, Start is just a news app on my Surface Duo 2. Look, Kevin, I don't know what to tell you. Open the app and use it. Just go in and hit the app section. And you'll see everything you can do. There's a lot of stuff in there. Yeah, most of us use it for news as default, but it's absurd about the amount of stuff. Like I said, you can literally set it, because it's powered by Edge, set it as your default web browser, which is just strange. Like, who does that?
I'm looking at some of these within the Start app, and I'm like, I wish that was a separate app, like Translator.
Yeah,
I'd love a Microsoft Translator app. That'd be cool.
You can see though the groundwork, right? If Microsoft is like letting you set it as a default web browser, that's how you would get people to sort of use it as a super app, because people are always in web browsers all the time. And you're seeing this a bit with Edge itself. Edge is getting a lot of these kind of features built into it as well, right? Because it's all extensible in the sense that it's all an extension of Bing services. And so they're building a lot of Bing stuff into Edge. It's just not as kind of centralized, but you're getting a lot of the same features there as well. So I don't know. It's an interesting discussion, but at least with Edge, I think they're doing it in a smart way. I'm not sure Start is very successful.
I think the reason they're using Edge is they're only really using Edge for this on Windows because Windows doesn't have apps in the way that mobile does. So the Start app wouldn't really work on Windows or Mac OS. So what they're doing is that they're baking a lot of that into Edge because the web browser is the super app for desktop. Really, let's be honest.
True.
And so I think that's how they're viewing Edge. That, hey, let's sort of do what we're doing with Start, but within Edge on desktops, because that's where users are. And I think they might even be more successful with the browser on Edge on desktop than they will be with the dedicated app on phones. I'd love to know how many people have downloaded the Start app. I'm sure, doesn't the Play Store tell you? Oh, because it was MSN. Oh, it doesn't count, does it? Because it was technically MSN before, and so that's still
and then there's also the Bing app, which is basically the same thing.
I also really hate the apps are massive. They're both 300 megabytes. And on Duo, since you have both Bing and Star, so that's 600 megabytes for the same app.
So I'm saying they disabled Start because of all the notifications. I mean,
yeah, I did
true, but you can control notifications on Android.
But it's so annoying. I have to. Just don't send me anything unless I ask.
Yeah, like I'll keep maybe like breaking news on.
But to be fair, they think a lot of news is breaking, and it really isn't. I get notifications of things that I just don't think is worth the breaking news.
I will say, though, and now we're getting a little kind of tangential here, but the MSN News stuff is still kind of good in the sense because they take a lot of news stories that are behind paywalls, like from Washington Post and Atlantic and stuff, and they're fully readable on your device without opening. And they're formatted, right? They strip all the content out, and you're just getting the text mostly with maybe like a little ad here or there. But you're able to read stuff you normally couldn't without a paywall. And I think that's actually kind of a valuable service and where the value still is. I will say going on to the new tab and Explorer is like crack for me. Like I open that, and the more you use it, the more it does use machine learning to figure out your interests and stuff like that. And it's just like, yeah, it's not content that's necessarily like I need to know, but it's content that when I want to take 15 minutes and just catch up on nonsense like pop culture stuff, it's actually really good. And I'm actually surprised. I'm like, oh, I mean, I do want to learn about that. And why is that person not acting anymore? Like, I don't know. It's just like, it's a waste of time. But what else is
You're
like,
part of the problem, Daniel.
I'm just saying they know what they're kind of doing there. So, all right, let's move on. FTC suing Microsoft Activision deal. So this is kind of made the news in the last couple of weeks. I don't think it's a huge surprise. There were some motions there that this was going to happen. In fact, Microsoft's president, Brad Smith, put an editorial into the Wall Street Journal saying basically they shouldn't sue us. It's going to be a mistake. And then like a day or two later, they did sue them. So this is sort of a nonsense thing that's happening, I believe. And listen, this is the FTC panel right now is controlled by Democrats. And, it is turning to a bit of a political thing because the head of it said, we're going to be hard on tech companies and monopolies. And they took this, stance and thumping their chest. Technically, I'm all for that. Listen, I do think corporations tend to wield too much political power. I have a whole theory and thesis on this as a political science guy back in the day about its threat and how it can undermine democracy. And you're seeing it, right? It work in the reverse way with the whole woke thing, right? Now people on the right are getting upset, but it's like, well, this is capitalism. This is what you wanted. They're just responding to what the culture is doing. That's how business works. So I'm all for like this idea of maybe we should limit corporations, we should control pay better, maybe talk about the power that they wield. I think this is the wrong fight. I think this is the convenient fight, though. That is, they don't have a lot on their plate. They're building up the Google and Apple fight at some point. But this kind of landed, we got to do this deal thing. It's coming up in front of us. And so they're like, we're going to sue Microsoft and we're going to like make us look like we're, being tough on corporations. And it's such a weird fight because it's like, I get if you're fighting over, say, I don't know, like Wi-Fi or 5G, who controls the bands and who controls like certain technologies that they have patents on stuff. If they're doing unfair business practices like what Apple is possibly doing with its stores and collecting 30%. And like there's a lot of this issue that really does prevent like innovation from people from entering the market and competing. I don't really see how, one, we're talking about video games, which are hardly essential, right? I don't see how a company necessarily like dominates video games. they may temporarily be, and the reason they do this stuff is because of what? Franchises. But franchises are like movie franchises. They come and go. Halo is a great example of this. Even Gear of Wars, you could argue, is like this, where it's like it's kind of had its heyday, and it's not the big cool thing anymore, right? All I see are commercials for like Gods of War. What is it? Yeah, Gods of War. Is that the one? Basically, anything on PlayStation is the one that's you're seeing being advertised is sort of the big deal. But the thing is, it's like any company could come out, create a new IP, and if it's good, it'll catch on and then turns into a franchise. That's like what happened with Destiny, right? Destiny was a team that made Halo. They broke off, formed a new company, and they made Destiny. And then Destiny 2 came, and it's doing huge. So it's like all this stuff is ephemeral. Like just because you have a franchise, okay, Call of Duty is huge today. Yeah, but a competitor can come out tomorrow, and Call of Duty can just, fade away, just like World of Warcraft was doing for a long time, and now it got a boost again, right? So, like, I don't see how this prevents companies from, like, it's not like companies can't go and start studios. Not to mention the fact that Sony, as I just mentioned, tends to have all the cool first-party games anyway right now. It's such a weird thing. But Microsoft has gone out and said, oh, the Call of Duty thing, listen, we'll extend a 10-year deal with all the companies. We'll make sure that, Call of Duty is on PlayStation. They made a deal with Nintendo to bring it to all their stuff to Switch. They really went out of their way. They're open to the idea of even more concessions, and the FTC was like, no. And one of the reasons the FTC cited was like this deal with the European Union over when they bought the other studio. What was that one?
ZeniMax?
No. What was it?
ZeniMax, wasn't it?
Yeah, with ZeniMax. Yeah, and so like Microsoft there said, and this is pretty public, that any contracts we have existing with other platforms will continue to honor. We're not going to break anything, and we'll continue with those, and they'll be on a case-by-case basis when new sequels to those games come out. But there seem to be very likely we're going to kind of continue doing that because it's just more revenue for them anyway. What they didn't commit to, and they were honest about, was new IP, new titles coming out. They were like, we're not going to guarantee those are going to go to other platforms. We may keep those on ours. And they should have that right, right?
Yeah.
And that was a deal. And the EU went, okay, fine, stamp of approval, done. And the FCC is going like, oh, they lied to the EU because they said that they were never going to do that. And like, and the EU had to step in and go like, guys, you're getting this wrong. They told us exactly what they were going to do, and they did that, and we agreed with it. So the FCC looks stupid here. It's like they actually lied on one of their, either they lied or they're just ignorant about it. But one of their main points that they're citing, they're saying that Microsoft can't be trusted because of what they did with the EU. And the whole thing is faulty. And they're not even technically suing them, I guess, like in actual court and trying to block the deal. They're going through their panel system, which is like a lower level sort of threat. I think this gets thrown out. I think this is nonsense. I think it's going to be a tough argument for them to prove that, Microsoft is going to be a monopoly here. I just don't see these arguments holding up. They don't control a specific technology. It's about controlling IP. But what's the difference between that and movie studios, or how Comcast and AT&T and HBO Max, they're all merging all the time, and apparently no one cares about that. But I don't know. Any studio can come along and make a good video game, and if it catches on, it catches on. I don't see how that changes. I don't know how you stop companies from buying other companies. And just saying, oh, it's a monopoly. It's like, but they're not even close to that. And plus, Microsoft's not the market leader in video games. That's the weird thing.
Yeah.
Like, if they were already number one, you could be like, oh, God, this is going to be really bad. But they're not. They're behind. It's like, the whole thing is just weird.
It's also really interesting. Sorry, go on.
No, it's fine.
It's also really interesting that one of the reasons why Microsoft are even buying Activision and want to go ahead with this acquisition isn't for Call of Duty, which is what a lot of the headlines and what Sony specifically is very focused on. And I am assuming the FCC is acting on behalf of Sony here slightly. Because the claims they're making are absurd, and it does sound like Sony, really. Like, if you told me Sony was doing this, I'd be like, yeah, that makes total sense.
Yeah.
Sony's super worried about COD, and Microsoft has sort of tried their best to be like, hey, listen, you can have COD. We're not bothered about COD. You can have it. What Microsoft really wants Activision Blizzard for is for the mobile side of things. Their mobile library is ginormous, and I think this plays into the bigger thing going on right now with the duopoly between Google and Apple and their app stores.
Yeah.
And I think and I believe this is even rumored at this point, Microsoft wants its own app store, and Microsoft wants and it wants to fill that app store with its own games. And the way to do that is through, Game Pass and building an app store and having games to put in there, just like Netflix. Or, but video streaming is a perfect example of this. Like, Netflix is essentially its own storefront, right? You don't pay for individual things in there. You pay a subscription.
Right.
But everything in there is something you can browse, look for, like an app store, select, and then consume. Microsoft, I think, wants to have the same thing there because it doesn't have a platform. It's lost that game in the mobile space. The next best thing is to have a mobile app store. And, that's not going to work on desktop because desktops are open platforms, so storefronts have to be open as well. And Microsoft has been very good in that department, and, they're all in on Steam and Epic Game Store and stuff. But on iOS, at least, Game Pass isn't allowed. Apple doesn't allow Game Pass because Apple wants a cut on every single game within Game Pass, and also it wants a cut on all those in-game purchases, which it's not possible. That's not how that works. Nothing Microsoft is doing with that service affects Apple's systems, services, servers, whatever you want to call it, for them to even take a cut. But Apple, since they are the be-all, end-all on iOS, say, no, you can't have this app is not allowed to run on this platform. We're not allowing it unless you give us 30% of everything that happens within the app. And so Microsoft, I think, part of the reason why they're buying Activision Blizzard is so that they can build up their own storefront and, have more of a say in this battle, because right now it is a duopoly it's not between platforms, it's between storefronts, really. The App Store, the Google Play Store. And although the Android's a lot more open, there's still lots of issues around, Google, what do they call it? Google Suite, Google's Play Suite, whatever it's called. And Microsoft would very much like to have a bat in this battle. And that's why I think they're going after it. And COD is just a nice addition. COD and all the other stuff that Bethesda and Activision both work on. But I think primarily it's all about the mobile stuff, because that's also where most of the money is. Mobile games you may not think are a big deal. They're massive. Yeah. They're massive.
And now we can get Candy Crush on all Windows devices.
First party app, baby.
So yeah, I don't know. Like I said, I normally support the FTC on these kind of moves, and yeah, we should have a discussion about corporate power in America and all that. I think this is just the wrong fight. I'm not saying that just because I'm like, oh, I cover Microsoft. I just don't see this as like quite the threat to technology.
Yeah.
Like I don't think most people care. It's a video games. It's like totally opt in. I don't know, and especially again, Microsoft is not even close to being the number one in games. So how are they a monopoly? I don't see this putting them over the edge of being a monopoly, because PlayStation 5 still outsells Xbox by quite a lot.
And that's not going to change, because Microsoft continues to promise that COD and all of those top AAA titles will be on PlayStation for the next 10 years, they've said, right? They've said, listen, we're willing to sign a legally binding document that promises we ship COD and all the other AAA titles, or maybe just COD, I don't know, COD on the PlayStation for the next decade. And Sony's still like, we aren't convinced. So it's like, I think Sony just doesn't want them to buy the COD. Sony's primary concern is COD. That's totally what they're worried about. But I think Microsoft's sort of main goal for this acquisition isn't COD at all. COD is a nice bonus, but their main focus is the mobile stuff. And so there's a lot of crossed wires and sort of misguided thoughts and opinions on this. Microsoft on one end is like, we really don't want to affect your business, Sony. Please, we will give you what you want. We want to buy this we want to do this for another reason. But Sony's sort of ruining the party for them. And so it's all been confusing and stuff. And isn't this still supposed to close like soon? It's
so
now, right?
Just a little bit more perspective here. So they said the FTC, Microsoft has already shown that it can and will withhold content from its gaming rivals. Yeah, how dare they?
Right? Yeah, no, that's fine.
Like Sony doesn't do this already.
Yeah.
What are you talking about? Today, we seek to stop Microsoft from gaining control over a leading independent game studio and using it to harm competition in multiple dynamic and fast-growing gaming markets. Ah, yes, yes, yes. Because it's already not controlled by giant corporations. And they point to Microsoft making Starfield and Redfall exclusive games as a reason because, yeah, they said that they're going to make those exclusive for Xbox and PC. But yeah, the FTC is filing the suit with its own administrative courts, not a federal court. The agency has not sought a preliminary injunction, meaning technically Microsoft and Blizzard can still finish the merger, though at the risk of not having regulatory approval. So this is, again, I think this is just all chest thumping. I think this goes away. I think this is just nonsense. And Microsoft did say they're going to fight this. They're not going to just like compromise their way out of it. They're going to.
I mean, they're going to fight it because they probably know they can win because it's such a nonsense.
And this just makes the FTC look bad, in my opinion, because it's like I said, I'm on their side technically. Like, let's have this discussion about corporate power. But now they're picking this fight. It looks stupid. They're getting things flat out wrong in their own press release about the reason why they're going after the company. Could you imagine? That's like, who did their homework? Can you imagine suing someone and like, we're doing this because you did that? Like, no, he didn't do that. You know, it's like, how dumb do you have to be? This is like so amateur. And then they look like a bunch of olds who just don't have no clue about technology, which is probably true. You know, and it's just like, you know, I like, what's his name? Bernie Sanders. Yeah, but like, you know, the dude's like almost 80, like chiming in on video games. Like, all right, I'm not saying you can have your opinion, but I'm going to be skeptical about your knowledge of the field. I don't think you're up to date on this stuff. I don't think you actually know what's going on. I think you hear people talking in your ear about it. And that could be including Sony and other trade groups being like, hey, you know, this would be really bad. All right, I don't know crap about video games. Sounds good to me. So this is just, I think, the kind of the flaw with government when it comes to this, especially more advanced technologies. Now, gaming is trivial, I'm going to argue, but there are more serious discussions around real technology that I think that can be much more impactful. The whole discussion years ago about, competition on internet, I think was way more significant and impactful than whatever this is with video games. But I will continue to follow what's going on. Let's move on. Oh, look at that! I got another ad read. And for those of you who guessed, yes, it is Manscaped. I don't have any kind of hilarious thing to do this week again. Sorry, but I'll just read theirs because it is pretty darn funny. 'Tis the season for clean balls. Blah, 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 blah. Our friends at Manscaped are helping you clear your driveway for safe travels this holiday season. From stocking stuffers to white elephants, Manscaped's products are at the top of every wish list. Grab some crop mops for your pops or the body buffer for the holiday lover. Win this year's white elephant gift, which I still don't understand what that means, and help all the men in your life go from eggnog to nice hog this December by going to manscaped.com and using code WCP for 20% off plus free shipping, which is always actually a really nice thing. So again, I'll recap, they have their Platinum Package 4.0, which is brand new, normally $258. It's on sale for $150, and you can get 20% off of that, plus free shipping. And you're going to get the Lawnmower 4.0, which is what I would argue the first thing you should probably try to get. That's the body trimmer. It's really cool. It's waterproof. Type-C charging. It's got a light on it. You got the Weed Whacker for your ear and nose hair. 2-in-1 shampoo plus conditioner. That's how you know it's a guy product. I love how guy products are like, we put soap, conditioner, shampoo, mouthwash all into one product. And guys are like, yeah. Like, that's awesome, man. Why do I have to have all those bottles? You also have body wash, aloe infused, deodorant, aluminum free, and that's important. You should. I'm switching over to like natural deodorants and getting away from the aluminum and the stuff in antiperspirant. It's not really good for you health-wise. Crop Preserver, anti-chafing ball deodorant, Crop Reviver ball spray, Magic Mat disposable shaving mats, plus the Shed, which is a travel bag, which I actually have and I use when I travel. It's actually really nice. It's a $40 value, and a free pair of Manscaped boxers, which I've told you in the past are actually really, really comfortable because they're just quality made and their seams don't run over your manliness. If that's way too expensive for you, that's totally fine. You can just go get the Lawnmower 4.0, which is on sale for $85. Take 20% off of that. You'll have it for many years. It has a rechargeable stand. It's easy to use. You don't need a manual even how to operate it. They, of course, also have razors and just all sorts of other products as well. You just buy their, boxer shorts. They even have their cologne, which, hey, Manscaped, send me a sample of that. Let me try that out. I like how, by the way, commercials, they call it cologne, as they should. But like the fancy cologne commercials, they call it fragrance for men.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, you mean cologne?
Yeah.
It's called cologne. We're fragrance for men. Okay. But they have other packages where I think these are actually great gift ideas. If you just have a guy in your life, listen, just make it easy. Just go here, type in WCP, 20% off. You'll get this whole package, all boxed up, ready to go. Shopping is done. If you're like me, I hate shopping. I think this is a great idea. And let's face it, every guy needs this. I'm going to say it. All you need this. A lot of you guys are gross, so don't be gross. Anyways, go to manscaped.com, enter the code WCP, 20% off. We appreciate it as it does help the website and our podcast. As always, thank you to Manscaped. All right, let's move on to our final topics here. Logitech G Cloud review. I won't spend a ton of time on this, but this is a cool review. I think this is an interesting category. This was done by Zach Bowden, who is very passionate about this. If you don't know, the Logitech G Cloud is a handheld, it's basically the first handheld cloud-only based gaming devices on the market right now. And so it works with Xbox cloud gaming. It works with all the cloud gaming services because it runs a version of Android. It has a pretty nice display. It runs a Qualcomm Snapdragon 720G octa-core processor, 4 gigs of RAM, 64 gigs of storage, which of course it does have expandable storage, a 7-inch full HD LCD display, 60 hertz refresh, 450 nits of brightness, and it's got dual bottom firing speakers, headphone jack, and it has a typical button layout, the Xbox style, as you would come to expect. And it's not a perfect device, and Zach's pretty honest about it, where he says, it does have some flaws and things he doesn't like about it. But I think he says he was just more impressed with the fact that he sees this genre as being really kind of something to watch, and that he's kind of a convert now of like this idea of like using cloud gaming, especially at home on the couch, as sort of the future. His cons: high price tag limits its appeal. Software experience on Android is far from perfect. So this is the one of the limitations with Android. There's some like pop-ups and things that happen with which this device isn't meant for. Controller support in games is wildly inconsistent, and he mentions the touch display isn't that great either, which makes it sometimes difficult to use if you want to, just use touch only. It's $300 at Amazon, so it's not cheap. I don't consider it that expensive either, but it is weird to think about because you need to be obviously on Wi-Fi to use it. But it gets good battery life, really good battery life. And that's the reason why I think people would use this over, say, their smartphone. Plus, it's just more ergonomically built, purpose-built for gaming. And I personally like that idea. So he gave it 3.5 out of 5 stars. But he says, there's a lot of promise here for this stuff. And I should point out, Razer has their device coming out sometime in, I believe, January, February timeframe. It's got a bigger display, a higher resolution. I think it's 120 hertz, and it's got way more stuff in it. And it's not that much more expensive. So look forward to that review. But I'm into this idea of cloud gaming and handhelds. I think it's really interesting. I should mention Razer will have a 5G option via Verizon, where they're going to announce like special pricing plans, because Verizon's 5G is not cheap at all. So I think they're going to knock that price down if you have this device. So you can actually be able to use this just, not on Wi-Fi, which I think is a really interesting experiment. I think it's still early days for this stuff, but I'm glad to see this stuff happening. Zach, what do you think about handheld cloud devices, and should Microsoft make one?
I actually really like the look of the Logitech G Cloud. I know it kind of got sort of jumped on by the press and gamers specifically when it was announced. To be fair, it is quite expensive for what it is. It's not even a high-end Android device. It's a mid-range Android device at best, which is a shame because it would be a great sort of Android gaming device in addition to being a cloud streaming device if it had a flagship chip in it. Be able to play all the high-end sort of, Call of Duty Mobile or PUBG or whatever locally on the device, which would be really nice. But sadly, it kind of struggles with that because of the 778G on the inside. But I like the look of it. Honestly, I look
Yeah.
at this and I get the impression that Microsoft worked with Logitech on that hardware. And this may even be Microsoft testing the waters for an Xbox handheld. Would not surprise me if that's sort of they're going to sort of test the waters with this, see how it goes. If it goes well, then they'll do an Xbox handheld. If it doesn't go well, then they won't. So buy one.
It's a yeah. I like this idea. I think it's like I said, it's kind of cool. The idea that you can just instantly you have to download the game. You're not limited by internal memory. Like, oh, I want to try this new game now. Oh, I got to delete this old game. Like you could just be like, oh, I'm just going to stream this game today. I'm just going to try this game and just stream
Yeah.
away and get that. I think it's a really interesting proposition. Obviously, it's early adopters, and you have to have a little extra income to be able to do this. But I'm glad companies are making the option for it. Razer's going to, I think, do really well for the more high-end kind of version of this. Where Microsoft would fit in, I don't know. They could either go lower or higher. I don't know. But I think there's a lot of room for growth here. I'm kind of interested to see what happens there. What's predictions and expectations for 2023? Even I don't really have these. Well, I guess I could throw out some.
Well,
maybe,
yeah, this
but
is
you.
going to be more of a discussion
Oh, okay.
than an actual thing. So yeah, since this is the last show of the year, and I believe we've done this basically every year. But what are we expecting? What are we predicting for the year ahead for Microsoft in the Windows and Surface space? Last year I predicted / expected most of the hardware which has shipped this year. The only thing I was kind of wrong on was the Surface Earbuds 2. Those didn't ship this year, which I kind of thought would. So let's push those back. I think they'll ship next year. So yeah, Surface Earbuds 2. I think let's talk about Surface stuff first. I think Surface Earbuds 2 is kind of likely. I know they're codenamed Ella, so they do exist, and they were, as far as I'm aware, they were supposed to ship in October just gone. So if they didn't ship then, I'm guessing the next port of call for them will be springtime 2023. I'm not expecting huge sort of changes to the Surface line in 2023. I don't think. Give me one sec to pull up one of my notes here. We have Surface Laptop Studio 2, I think, is a likely one, considering the last Surface Laptop Studio came out in 2021. And Surface Books historically have been on an 18-month refresh cycle, and the Surface Laptop Studio is basically the Surface Book 4. So a Surface Book 5 or Surface Laptop Studio 2 would be spring 2023. I wouldn't get too hung up on whether it would be spring or fall because the component shortage, things are moving around constantly. But I think 2023 for a Laptop Studio 2 is very likely. Likely with probably Elder Lake. I don't think we'll see 13th gen. Unless it's in the fall, maybe. But if it's not in the fall, if it ships sooner than that, it will probably be a 12th gen device. Surface Laptop Go 4. Not Laptop Go 4, Surface Go 4 on its own, no laptop there, I think is also quite likely, and I have sort of teased before on this podcast, but I am hearing that device may be an ARM-based device for the first time in that line. So in addition to the Surface Pro, which has an SQ3 in it, we may be getting a Surface Go 4 with a Snapdragon 7C based chip. That would be pretty cool. I don't know if they're going to keep the Intel version around. That'd be really nice, but we'll have to wait and see. Also, I'm expecting... let's see here, what have I got? Surface Laptop SE2 is maybe on the agenda for next year as well. Not too sure what we'll be doing with that. I'm guessing 12th gen, but I think the design and stuff will remain the same. The Laptop SE is the very low cost, sub $300 laptop for K through 6 students. So I wouldn't expect too much innovation in that department. And also maybe Surface Laptop Go 3. And I have started hearing whispers that the next Surface Laptop Go will have a new design, an updated design, thinner bezels, some other stuff like that. So that would be interesting. Well, maybe not thinner bezels because the bezels are already quite thin, but there are changes to the design that are apparently on the cards for the Surface Laptop Go 3. Of course, the big one, Surface Duo 3. Will we see a Surface Duo 3 next fall? I'm less and less confident every day. I do know that they are working on big changes for the Surface Duo 3, and I promise I will get a story out about this in early next year. But the story is so long and complex at this point, so this is why I'm struggling to get a story out, because there's so many different parts to it. But essentially I would say that the Duo 3 may be late 2023, but more likely sometime in 2024. I would love to be wrong about that. I would love to see it in the fall of 2023, but Yeah, I promise to get a story out about my hearings on the Surface 203 as soon as I possibly can. Surface Dock 3 is apparently also a possibility for next year. I assume that will be thinner than the Surface Dock 2. The Surface Dock 2 is quite chunky. I think they're just going to make it thinner. And maybe they'll add more to it. I don't know. But yeah, those are my sort of predictions. I assume we'll see laptop 6 and the Surface Pro. Not too sure what's going to be new with them yet. Though I am starting to hear a few things. Again, that'll be a story for early next year. Dan, any suggestions or predictions for the Surface line next year?
Nah. I mean, we did see major revisions for the Pro series, and we don't have a Pro X anymore, so that makes sense. The laptop, yeah, I'd like to see, obviously, I don't think they need to change a lot about that. You and I are in agreement that, yeah, make the bezels a little bit thinner, maybe stretch this display out a little bit larger. You know, what else do you need to do? Make it all Alcantara? That'll never happen.
I'd like to see them basically make a thinner laptop studio, like without the pull forward display. Yeah. I like the sort of flat design of the sides and stuff of the laptop studio. If they could bring that to the Surface laptop, that'd be really nice, because when it would show, it'd be like all like this one piece of metal. It'd be amazing. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I love the laptop studio's design. I think it's just amazing looking. And didn't like Tom Ward on The Verge recently write about how to bring back the Surface Book?
No, that was somebody else at. I don't know if they're at The Verge, but it was someone else. And yeah, there was an editorial titled "Bring Back the Surface Book," and they talked about how the Surface Book was very unique in design, which I totally agree. I do think the Surface Book was a beautiful laptop. But functionally, it was flawed.
Yeah, it was a great laptop. It's just you're paying for this display to come off, which most people didn't use, which would have been fine outside. But when you're paying for it, you're literally financially paying for it, but you're paying for the trade-off and performance.
Yeah, that's it.
It was nowhere near what it should have been in terms of performance. It was literally just an Ultrabook, whereas the Laptop Studio now has real performance in it. It's actually a really different device than Surface Laptop. And I think that's just like, yeah, it was a great design that they had, but the Laptop Studio is just such I think it's one of the best devices they've ever made. Yeah, Surface Duo 3, of course, I'm hopeful for that. I don't want to say predictions. You've already kind of covered what we're expecting there. My guess is it's going to be a folding single screen, which if it's done right, fine, I'll be on board with it. I'll take it over nothing, right? We've had that discussion endlessly on this podcast. I'd still, I think, prefer dual screens, but, if Microsoft is, and they're very likely not to go that route, I totally understand it. That's just the market realities if they want this thing to survive and succeed. And yeah, we're not really expecting any new form factors.
Right.
But, I'm just going to tease a little bit here, nothing from Microsoft, but there's a cool thing that's coming that's going to, I think, surprise a lot of people that were upset that this thing wasn't coming, and now is coming in a new kind of way. That's as much as I can dance around the topic. I'm just going to say it's going to be like, hey, you said you all wanted this. Oh, okay. You can now kind of get it. It's not Windows Phone, so don't go there. Yeah. In terms of what we'll continue to see from innovation from other companies, it's going to be, I think was it 3 years ago, we saw the dual screen, single screen PCs being talked about. I think we'll see some more of that. I don't think you're going to see like necessarily a mainstream, everybody coming out with something, but I think we'll see more of it as these companies dabble with different sizes and formats and ways of it's working. I think you'll still see, there's one company that I think for CES, they're releasing at least two things that I just think are wild. Like, I'm just like, oh, that's so cool. And like, it goes to show you that, innovation in the PC space is definitely not dead. And there are going to be things that, it's going to be cool. I don't know. Like there's like, it's really kind of neat. You'll still, I think display technology is going to kind of continue to evolve. Even LG just announced a 240 hertz OLED gaming display, which is the first time that's been done, which is pretty wild. OLED was always typically a lot slower than LCD for gaming, and now it's definitely not.
I would love to see a Surface display. We say it every year. I've not heard next year will be the year, but I have heard that they are prototyping Surface displays, even ones with curves, like a curved display.
Oh yeah.
So that would be quite interesting to see if that ship eventually. Again, I don't think that would be next year, but it's some, it's always, we always say this, like, if it's a form factor or an idea, the Surface team have almost certainly prototyped it. Wearables, computers, laptops, phones, you name it, they have designed them internally. That doesn't mean they will ever ship, but it's just the Surface display is one that a lot of people have been asking for a very long time, and Apple are now back in the sort of monitor game, and I'm hoping that will give Microsoft the sort of drive they need to sort of actually get back in the monitor game themselves, or get into the monitor game and ship their own Surface monitors for computers and whatnot, because I think that would be awesome. I'd also love to see the Windows Dev Kit turn into a real consumer product. It's not ready yet. It's very much a developer device at the moment, but if they could turn that around as a sort of premium mini desktop PC with ARM, with a metal enclosure and all that other fancy stuff that you would expect from a consumer device. Essentially, you compete with the Mac Mini. That would be awesome. Again, not heard that's actually on the cards, but would be nice to see them do that. It wouldn't be too much of a stretch for them to go from the dev kit to an actual consumer product. But yeah, I was going to say,
I do have something else for displays, and I don't have to name companies involved in this, but something you're going to see for next year's laptops. 18-inch laptops.
Wow.
18-inch is the new 17s. And has to do with the wider adoption of the 3x2 or 16x10 display aspect. They can basically be 18. So you're going to have an 18-inch display that's basically in the size of a 16 to 17-inch laptop currently, which is kind of wild. And of course, 15s are moving to the 16 range, right? So we're getting some pretty big displays, but you'll see this in sort of not just how do you say it? Productivity creator laptops. You'll see it also sort of in gaming laptops too. But yeah, much bigger. Yeah, 18-inch displays. It's kind of crazy. I'm sure we'll see a few of these. And that just comes down to probably LG and or Samsung are just making these panels. And so companies are like, oh, cool, we'll just make a laptop now that can take that panel. And that's what's happening around that. Yeah. So you're going to start to see more of that. Yeah, with ARM, well, I guess the big thing will be next year. I expect around October, November timeframe. We're going to hear a lot more about Onyx from Qualcomm. That's their Nuvia chips.
Yeah.
They're going to unveil those.
That most of that won't start shipping till 2024 is the year for the Onyx stuff, really, right? Yeah.
Yep.
That's a shame.
And so, yeah, and they expect, though, by the end of 2024, like, what they call like a pinnacle moment, almost like a shift in the I think they're expecting a wider adoption. The reason they can say that is because I guess they're getting a lot of interest already from OEMs who are being kept in the loop about this stuff, about the capabilities and probably early demos and how they'll be able to design their laptops around it. And apparently they're getting a lot of adoption or commitments to it. So yeah, assuming everything kind of ships around that time, late 2024 could be for holiday season. We could really be talking about how ARM is really now starting to make a large impact on the PC space. But I don't know. Like I said, you're going to start to see continued more form factors in PCs. But
regarding Windows, because I think Windows plays a big sort of role in the continuation of this sort of innovation in hardware for the next year. 2023 will be the first year with this continuous innovation system that Microsoft has put in place for Windows 11, where they plan to sort of release feature drops for Windows consistently throughout the year. That starts in February, as far as I'm aware, with the second moment update for Windows 11 22H2. The first one was out in October, and that included things like tabs in File Explorer and some other things. The second one is expected in February/March timeframe, and that would include the new tablet interface for the taskbar, updates to the system tray, search box in Task Manager, and some other stuff that I can't remember off the top of my head. But that is coming. That'll be the next sort of moment update. Then there's another one planned for the spring, late spring, early summer, and then I believe there's a fourth one planned for the fall. Now, what's interesting about the fourth one is I'm not too sure yet if that will be basically the 23H2 release or if it would be 23H2 and then a Moment update comes shortly after to sort of bring a couple additional features, similar to how the Moment 1 update acted for the 22H2 RTM. Either way, that will be in the fall, and that will sort of round off the year of 2023. There'll be sort of 3 big feature drops, one in February, one in May, June, one in September, October. And they will add all kinds of different things. Right now, basically everything in the beta channel right now is representative of the Moment update shipping in February. The dev channel, stuff in the dev channel at this point that isn't in the beta channel yet is probably destined for Moment 3 in May. So which tells me in January, February time, we may start to see some more interesting stuff show up in the dev channel for that May time frame release. So that would be super interesting. But yeah, this is the first year that the Moment engineering effort is really going into full effect. And it's the first time Microsoft will be consistently servicing Windows with new features on a regular basis. They're essentially sort of timing them for every 3 months. And yeah, that's going to be a pretty big deal. Then, of course, 2024 is the Windows 12 stuff, or we air quotes Windows 12. Next Valley is kind of when that's being aimed for. And I don't think we'll see anything for Windows 12 until 2024. I think they'll do what they did with Windows 11 and basically hide everything until the last minute. But yeah, we'll have to wait and see regarding that. So I think those are our predictions and expectations for Windows and Surface in the next year. Quite a bit of interesting stuff, but really, honestly, if I was being honest with you guys, I think 2024 is going to be the big year. You know, it lines up with the Nuvia stuff. It lines up with the Windows 12 stuff. I'm hearing some very interesting things regarding Surface for 2024. There's a lot which seems to be tying into 2024 as being a big moment for Microsoft, for Windows, for Surface, and for the PC industry as a whole. So 2023 is going to be more of a holdover year, I think, but hopefully it'll still be quite interesting. We'll have to wait and see.
Cool. Well, I have nothing else to add to that. So, plus we're getting a little long here in the podcast. Yeah. Thing of the week, thing of the year. Do you have either one of those?
Sorry, say that again. You cut out.
Thing of the week or thing of the year? Do you have either one of those?
Oh, I have a thing of the week. It's certainly not a thing of the year. I watched, it's not even new. It was on Netflix. I think it came out a couple of years ago. I watched something called The Island, the I-Land. And it's about, I don't want to spoil it. It's a limited series, so it's a complete story beginning to end. There's no season 2, there's no season 3. So you can sit down, sort of binge it. I think it's 6 or 7 episodes, all around an hour each or something like that. And it's about a bunch of people who wake up on an island and they're all perfectly separated apart along the beach, and they have to figure out how they got there. They don't remember anything about themselves or how they got there, and they have to figure out why they're there, how to get away, and the mysteries of the island. And yeah, there's a few twists and turns. It turns out, you know, the show starts out in a certain way, but it doesn't end in the way. Like, it certainly takes a detour and it becomes an entirely different show. And I thought it was okay. It wasn't the most amazing show in the world, but I thought it was good. The acting was great and all that stuff. And yeah, I thought it was really nice.
The series was poorly reviewed, with review aggregator website Rotten Tomatoes reported an 8% approval rating for the first season, with an average rating of 3 out of 10 based on
terrible.
12 reviews.
That's
the
really
site's
bad.
critical consensus reads, bafflingly bad. The only mystery is how the island got made in the first place. But Zach recommends it.
It's something I watched. Listen, I thought it was an easy watch.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it.
Yeah,
There's a little bit of mystery there. It's not super complex. You don't have to sit down and pay attention to it too much.
Right.
Yeah. So that's my thing of the week. A terrible
all
thing
I
of the
watch
week.
All I watch are like Family Guy reruns at night. I can't talk, but it makes me laugh, so that's okay. Actually, do you know, therapeutically speaking, rewatching things that you've seen before that make you laugh is actually supposed to be very good for, like, basically staying happier, which sounds kind of weird, but, like, say, you know, a lot of people love The Office or Friends, or for me, I just like Family Guy. Like, it's not like I watch it intensely. I just leave it on while I'm doing other things, and I get the little jokes. And yeah, it just, that familiarity, it's good for your mental health, is what I'm saying. So it's like they've done some research on this stuff, and I think it's kind of just a cool thing. My thing of the week, which I forgot to mention weeks ago, actually, was a movie that came out this year that some people recommended called Barbarian. which you can rent digitally. And it's not for the faint of heart. It is a horror genre. It is French kiss, or chef kiss, whatever. It is perfect. It's one of the reason I love this movie so much was because it went there. Like anytime a director like has the
Christmas
choice, like
sale.
do I choose A or B, which is really the tasteless or the decision that no sane person would make. He always chose B, and I had I think it's a he director. I'm assuming here, but I have such respect for the director's choices here because, like, in my warped mind, I'm like, yes, do this, do that, do that, do that, and like, oh my god, he did it! Oh my god, you're so good. And it's because I'm a little warped and twisted, and I need, yeah. It's a great movie though. It was a fun premise. It is horror, but there are like absurdities and moments that you're just going to laugh out loud too during it. And you have no idea what's going to happen. Like there's no way you're going to watch this and kind of predict. In fact, like halfway through the movie, like it breaks and it feels like it turns into a different movie. Like, wait, what's going on? How is this going to be connected to what I just saw? And it was just done so well. It was refreshing to see. And I watched it with my best friend and my SO, and we were just all like, wow, that was a movie. And like I said, Barbarian, highly recommended. Do I have a thing of the year? I mean, I've talked endlessly about HP's laptops. I think the Dragonfly and the Elite Folio, or the Dragonfly Folio G3, whatever they're calling it. I think HP's had an incredible year this year for laptops and PCs. And that's not to say Lenovo or Dell are like far behind. They're definitely not. Both those companies have devices I really, really liked. Lenovo's ThinkPads are still kind of awesome to use. I really like their Nano and their X12 or X13s, the ARM device, which someday on my review. Oh my God. But all these companies are just doing really well in the PC space, and they're creating some really amazing things. But HP has just been kind of crushing it. I still they have that 34-inch all-in-one, which I have a review coming someday for. I actually want to get that done right away. But yeah, it's just been good stuff. So I still recommend HP as my top choice for laptops. That includes their Envies. I'm not talking about all their expensive stuff. I really like their Envy lines. Their new Envy 16 is really impressive. So if you're looking for new laptops, and the Spectre 16 has got like a huge sale right now. It's like down to like $1,000, and I actually did review that one, and that's an incredible laptop. It's a 2-in-1, which is kind of wild. But amazing display, incredible audio, great keyboard, nice trackpad, tons of ports. It's just a cool looking device, and I really like it. And yeah, that's kind of Microsoft. If I had to recommend their device of the year,
Pro 9.
the Surface Pro 9. Yeah, the Pro 9 was cool. And Dell, of course, the XPS 13 Plus gained all the attention, and they do deserve accolades for that design. I think the performance is absurd, and I think it's a little overkill, but I understand what they're going for as a differentiator because they want to keep the regular XPS 13 around, which also got revised, and I actually really like that device. We do have a review coming for that very soon. I would actually, I think pragmatically, I would go for the XPS 13 for most people, but the Plus is pretty wild, and I really like the keyboard on that despite its controversy. For Lenovo, I already kind of went through them. Actually, the Yoga 9i, I think, is that 14-inch, which I reviewed at the beginning of the year with its OLED display. I think is still one of the best 14-inch laptops. Although I would argue the HP Spectre 13.5 is also right there. So all these companies are just kind of kicking butt. And then Razer has, of course, their gaming laptops, which continue to do well. Yeah, that's kind of it. I don't know if I have a single device of the year. I'll probably think of something when I hang up this call. But, well, yeah, like I said, I think it's the HP stuff. That's because that's all I've been gushing about for these last couple of weeks because it's just what I've been using. So there we go. That wraps it up for 2022. What a wild year. 2023 doesn't look to be that much better. I think this is the new norm. Hopefully all of you will stay safe out there. There's a lot of sickness still going around between the flu and the vid and all that kind of stuff. So make sure you take care of yourself and stay healthy. I hope everyone has a wonderful holiday. We'll be back, like I said, around January 13th for our new podcast. Until then, though, follow me on Twitter, Daniel_Rubino, Rubino. And you can follow me at Mastodon now, too, apparently at Daniel also _Rubino at cloud.mastodon or mastodon.cloud. I forgot how that works. Zach, follow you at ZACBOWDEN on Twitter. And Zach, what's your Mastodon? Do you want
At Zach Bowden at mastodon.social. Oh, yeah.
Okay, so it's mastodon.social on mastodon.cloud because the world is complicated. Anyway, as always, thanks for tuning in. We'll do Q&A with the audience briefly now for the live chat, but you can always join us, like I said, on Fridays, 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time when we record this live and join the live chat there. As always, thanks for listening. Go to Manscaped and go to the other site for sponsoring us. As always, thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you next time. Take care, everyone.
Cool. Almost a 2-hour podcast. That's a good way to end the year, I think.
Yeah. Tired.
So yes, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask. I saw somebody ask, am I expecting a 16-inch Surface Laptop Studio? I am not. I've not heard that that's on the way anyway, sadly.
Yeah, maybe version 3. It sticks around.
Thoughts on Microsoft Edge? Dropping support for Windows 7 8.1 and their server counterparts in January 2023 with version 1.10 and on. I think it makes sense, to be honest. I think Windows 7 is out of support, and I think Windows 8.1 is also out of support come January. So, yeah, get off Windows 7 and Windows 8. What are you doing?
Seriously. But I hate it.
Buy a Mac then. Is there a chance for a Headphones 3? I've not heard, unfortunately. They are well overdue a refresh, I agree, but yeah, I've not heard that they are on the cards for next year. Prediction on if Duo 3 will be 2 hard screens or a single folding screen. What if it's 1 hard screen on the outside and a single folding screen on the inside? What does that count as? Zach, do you think that any of the things you mentioned in the Windows 12 article are something Microsoft could achieve and have been working towards? Yes, I do. Maybe not all of it. Some of it's certainly just from my own imagination, but others, it's certainly mixed with things I've been hearing. I'll let you decipher which is what. One thing I will, I guess, not confirm, but say that is something they're working on, is the whole scalability thing with a version of Windows that can be brought down to the bare essentials, but then also be full all the way to the top with all the legacy stuff you could ever want. That is something that they are trying to achieve. And I will maybe have a post on this next year if I can figure out how to write it properly. But you know how Windows Core OS was essentially rebuilding Windows from the ground up as a sort of modern platform that was modular, that they could slot things in and out of. They're kind of doing that again, but from a differently. One where legacy support isn't left behind and it isn't an afterthought. It becomes, you get to the point where you want to add legacy to it, and you can, and it's native, and it's not, well, native in air quotes. It's not running in like a VM, which is kind of how Windows Core did it originally. Will we see an article next year about Microsoft should call the next version of Windows XXXX? Yeah, maybe. It depends if I hear what it will be called. Can you play Minecraft on the Surface Pro 9 with 5G? I think you can, can't you, Dan? Should be quite an easy game.
Yeah, I don't see why not. Yeah. Yeah, it should be fine.
The Verge wrote an article saying Microsoft should bring back the Surface Book line. What are your thoughts on this? We just had that discussion about 5 minutes ago.
You're wrong. It's dumb. I get the appreciation for the design that went into Surface Book. It was amazing. It was creative, but I think between the reality of people not using it for its intended purpose and then the trade-off and performance as a result of that design was just, I'm glad it's gone. Surface Laptop is way more powerful than the Surface Book, it was just weird because Surface Book was always like that, and Surface Book was basically just a little bit more powerful because sometimes it would have a GPU with it. But other than that, it was very similar. It was a great device, but no, Surface Laptop is, I don't know. I don't get people who don't like the Surface Laptop, Laptop Studio. How do you not see that as better?
Is the third moment in May meant to be bigger? I don't know. I will say May is usually the time of new surfaces. The moment 3 will maybe be timed with like a surface release. That doesn't necessarily mean it'll be a huge thing, but that does mean it will probably get more marketing than the moment 2 will. So yes, we'll have to wait and see about that. Or maybe they've decided to push moment 2 back, and the May thing is both moment 2 and moment 3. Who knows? But no, as far as I'm aware, moment 3 won't be any bigger or smaller than moment 2. Oh dear. Is Zach certified on Mastodon? I don't think anybody is certified on Mastodon.
Oh, you mean verified?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I don't think they do that. No, there's no system in place for it.
Well, they should, and I should be verified there, please. Thank you.
Yeah. Again, verification, I think, just should be a system that all social networks should have, and it should just be a simple machine learning AI third-party tool that of which there are plenty of. But then it gets into the pay thing. Who pays for that? But I guess I don't see why they couldn't set it up so it's like you pay for it. Like, oh, you want to be ID and verified on our platform? Okay, it's going to cost $30 one-time fee, and you got to do your license and all that. Like, yeah, everybody's going to do it, but it's an option, and it gets the payment taken care of, and it can avoid ads and all that kind of stuff. I think it's a good option. I don't know why Musk was so dumb about this. This wasn't complicated. Like, he's all into AI and machine learning. Like, just search for AI, ML, ID verification. And you'll find a bunch of companies who are like, we offer services for ID verification, only minutes. Like, you just license that and make it happen. Need to charge people? Charge people. I think I still think it's fun. I still think it's funny. Like, people are going to pay $8 a month to use Twitter.
Yeah, we didn't have to pay it.
Right, but like you see, like he's upping the ante on like stuff. Like you're going to have to like if you want less ads, and you have to opt into ads, and like and he also said he's going to offer a higher tier sometime next year.
Good lord.
Yeah, they'll get rid of like almost all the ads. He says, or all the ads, and like
so there's gonna be $100 a month.
Yeah, right. Like I have no problem paying for a service, none, whatever. And the value was there. But man, I do not see the value in Twitter.
I use ad block, so I've got that for free already. So
yeah, right.
Should Microsoft keep the kickstand or try to do a device without the kickstand to save cost? I mean, how much money would they be saving on not doing a kickstand? I guess you've got to think about the hinges, the 2 hinges, the extra piece of metal. I guess I can't imagine it's too much.
Are we talking about the Pro series, obviously?
Yeah, I don't think they'll do a Pro without a kickstand.
What do you mean without what doesn't have a kickstand?
Nothing. That's what he's asking. Do you reckon they'll ever do a Surface tablets without a kickstand?
Oh, I think that no. That's, I think, core to their identity.
Yeah, I agree. I do agree.
And they're so good at it. I would argue that I find so many devices inferior that don't do this. I even don't like portable displays that don't have a built-in kickstand. It's just
unless they did like a gaming tablet with like Joy-Cons or joysticks that attach to either side, and that's sort of the device.
Yeah, but even there, like Steam Deck, like there's tons of accessories where you strap onto the back with the kickstand. Because people want that.
It is in all senses a step backwards for Surface.
Yeah.
It's hard to justify once they've done it, especially since they could do it on a $400 Surface Go. It's like, come on. What cost are you saving?
Yeah. What are your true feelings on Elon Musk? Listen, he's a human being. I don't hate him, and I don't love him. That's pretty much how I feel about most humans on this planet. He has a lot of things he's good at, and like all humans, he has a lot of things he's bad at. This is what makes a good human. I've been thinking about this a lot lately. There's at least 2 things I can think of. 3 things. Hubris, just being able to poke fun of yourself and not taking yourself too seriously, I think is super important. Empathy, I think just being able to understand other people. Some people are better at this than others. It's not something that's universal. I'm not even sure it can necessarily be taught. I will say there's evidence, if I do recall, that dropping LSD increases empathy in people. So go drop some acid is my advice. I did acid in college, loved it. I would do acid anytime. If I could do it now, I would do it. And the other thing was, the other thing is know your limits. One of the best qualities you can have as a human being is, know what you're good at and be proud of that. Also know what you're terrible at and be aware of it and be okay with it. It's fine. You don't need to go and front to the whole world about how you're great at everything. And people put Musk on this pedestal like, he did this and that. He's a genius. So everything he does has to be good. No, come on. And we all have our faults, and that's fine. He's not very good at running Twitter. Sorry, he's just not. I don't think he's very good at anything social. And that may have to do with the fact he's on the spectrum. And that's not being like, mean or anything like that. I know people on the spectrum, and they have these same social issues. The difference is they're aware of it. They've had therapy, or they've talked to people, and they figured out how they can better manage their lives so they don't come across as being jerks to people, because it's tough if you're on the spectrum to be able to relate and have these sort of what everybody considers quote unquote normal. And so you have to have the ability to seek out that. And if you're surrounded by a bunch of people who just tell you how great you are, you'll never get it. So those are my 3 advices. So I don't hate Musk. I don't love him. He's just another human being who does some good things and does some really dumb things. He's just like all of us at the end of the day. Hot take. Surface Duo 1 form factor is better than Duo 2. That's not really, it's a hot take, but it's not really a hot take. That was pretty endlessly discussed when Duo 2 came out, I will say. Because, a lot of people don't prefer the hump on the back. And Zach and I have also mentioned numerous times when we pick up Duo 1 how we're always like, damn. Especially with the software updates. It's gotten really good now. It's not that different from Surface Duo 2. But at the end of the day, the Duo 2's cameras are way better. NFC is really nice. Man, I've really become reliant on NFC and tap to pay recently just because I keep forgetting my wallet. And nothing is more horrifying when you go someplace and you're at the register like, I don't have my wallet. And they're like, do you tap to pay? I went to UPS the other day. I was like, do you guys have tap to pay? And they're like, yeah. It's like, I never heard anyone call it that before. Everybody calls it Apple Pay. I'm like, it's
wow.
Tap to pay.
That's such an American. I've never heard that. That is such an American thing to say.
It totally is.
That upsets me so much.
I know. I was just like, I gave that guy the raised eyebrow. Like, really? Do you know who I am?
What was I going to say? I would, if the Duo 1 had NFC and had a better haptic engine, I would probably use that over the Duo 2. And if it had 90 hertz displays. Basically, if the Duo 2 didn't have a camera bump, I would still use it. Is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
All right, last call for questions. Then it is time for us to head off for the rest of the year. So get them in now.
Gustav wants a Surface Duo that doesn't fold. I mean, hey, they have to be have thought about it. Yeah, just a phone.
Oh, definitely. They thought about it 7 years ago.
Right.
Called Lumia. No, yeah, they have certainly prototyped Surface phones. I actually do think they'll do one eventually. I really do.
Yeah.
I just think they need to get more confident in the software first.
Yeah, and that's something to stick a pin in, right? That I should talk about on the podcast. But yeah, you're going to see, I think, other companies lean into making their own phones that will be Android based, because the Android phone working with PCs, I think, really going to become a thing. I think I should have mentioned that. That's a thing to watch for. I think that's going to be a thing to watch. All right, I'm old. I'm going to go take a nap.
Cool. All right. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Thank you for listening throughout the year. We'll be back next year, and we will be ready to do it all again. But until then, follow us on Twitter. We'll keep you updated on when we go live. Until then, see you next time. Bye.